What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q here from Retro Q Gamer, back in effect as always. And well, here we are. We are back. Yes, that is correct. We are officially back. I want to welcome everybody to the 88th episode of our Quack experimental podcast. It's been a long time coming. We've been waiting more than a hot minute. It's more than a hot minute and a half. It's all up in there with 3 minutes, 3 hot minutes, and 33 hot seconds. That's what we have been waiting. Before we get any further, of course, I do want to say, yes, the big important one is we are back. I know the last couple of months, specifically about 12 weeks or so, have been a little bit rough, a little bit dry, a little bit sparse. But as I did post on the original update roughly 3-ish months ago, everything was going to be turbulent. There was very, very little to do, very, very little time, etc., etc. But now we are back. And what better way to come back? So, yes, when I say we are back, we're back with videos on the regular, podcasts on the semi regular, and just it is what it is. We are back, baby. But anyway, what better way to come back than with a big, super-sized, jumbo, super thick boy podcast? Because why not? We've been slacking. That's right, I have 3 months, give or take, 3 months of important notes, important announcements. And believe me, I've been going over this stuff again and again and again and again. I've been messing with all of this, having to update stuff, new information, new whatever it is came out. We had to do the entire thing. So yes, here we go. Where do we start? Well, we might as well jump right back into the whole thing. And we're going to start first off with Mortal Kombat 11. Yes, Mortal Kombat 11, something you probably didn't think you'd expect me to even ever talk about. But, well, Mortal Kombat 11 has officially been, I'm not going to say cancelled because the game is already released for several years now. But support is completely done, officially done. This news is from July 2nd, so we are a little bit behind. Chances are, if you're a Mortal Kombat 11 fan, you already know this and you're already well up on it. But it's important to, as a little bit of a PSA for those of you who aren't. So, official ended support for DLC. It is over. It is done on all platforms. More than 2 years worth of DLC coming to an end. I believe most of it, if not all of it, was paid. I don't follow Mortal Kombat 11 that close, but you know, it is what it is. So the main reason for this is NetherRealm Studios have now moved on to their next project, which they're full on working in full steam ahead, full effect, full whatever it is. And you know what? It's probably Mortal Kombat 12. But we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it only launches on current gen and PC. So, you know, that's not including the Switch, obviously. Oh, we're back already with the first topic and we're already throwing in some Switch shade. Damn, I haven't lost a step. Just call me Switch Bay. That's all it is. Dropping all that salt, throwing all that shade. That's all it is. I mean, let's be real. If you're here, you know what it is. You missed it. You loved it. And it's damn so good to be back. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster, as they say. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Next up, we have Diablo 2 Resurrected. Now, Diablo 2 Resurrected, game I was personally looking a huge amount forward to, and it pretty much lived up to the hype for the most part. However, there were a couple of negatives that we do want to talk about here when it comes to Diablo 2 Resurrected Edition. So the big ones, of course, are naturally the launch day problems, as unfortunately expected, simply because, I mean, why? Well, because it's an always online game and it has always online requirements, which means one thing: always online bullshit. It's just that easy, and it's just that unfortunate that again, but you know, I would say again and again and again, this kind of thing keeps happening. I don't want to even say it's like they don't prepare for it. It just feels like at this point they don't care. It's like we did a somewhat adequate amount, and now we just don't care. If it works, if it works. If he dies, he dies. It's that simple. I mean, but well, more on Blizzard, and if he dies later on. But yeah, there's just touching on some of the big problems with Diablo 2 Resurrected Edition. Even though it's completely not needed for anything at all. I mean, look at the original Diablo 2, it didn't have that requirement. But you even need it for a lot of offline game modes or offline characters in this one. But, you know, my DRM, which is pretty much just all it is, sadly and unfortunately, which is just a complete load of bollocks. Now, I've been told, so multiple things have come out, multiple different patches. I haven't tried some of this stuff just yet because they're different modes, different characters, different just didn't really need it or anything like that. But I've been told that this has been fixed and changed for offline characters. But I've also been told that you still need the persistent online internet connection for an offline character. Not so much for the offline character, but to play the game. But the character itself is stored locally, if that makes any sense. It's basically the same thing at the end of the day. I guess it just means as long as the authentication servers work, your character will work for your offline, instead of some of the shit I had to do on launch day where the authentication servers didn't work, then the online character servers didn't work, the lobby servers didn't work, the game servers didn't work. You get the idea. Just a load of giant oof in there anyway. But yeah. Speaking of extra oofs and all here too, we got some positive and negative oofs in it. Can you even have a positive oof? We've got some positive or negative oofs here. So let's start with the big negative one. First off, we're going to talk about the Switch. That's the oof right there. There's another oof. We got an oof sandwich here. We start with an oof, we go with some positive stuff, and then we end with another oof, like a sandwich in there too. So we're talking Animal Crossing here. So Nintendo have announced that Animal Crossing is going to receive a huge free update. It's going to be version 2.0 and it's coming November 5th. There's going to be lots of stuff added in here. I'm only going to touch on some of the main ones in this little section here. I'm not going to touch on any of the little tiny things that don't really matter at the end of the day. But the main addition is Brewster's Cafe, aka The Roost, if you know anything about Animal Crossing and Animal Crossing lore and all that. Cap'n is also making a return. He will be back around and he'll be doing these little mini boat tours to mysterious islands. They talk about new islands where they can be different time zones, different seasons, different stuff is going to be on them that can be on your natural one. But I almost feel like it's just a lazy different variant of the... What was the one you could... Was not Mystery Island. You know the one you could buy with the Bells ticket and you could fly to the island? I almost feel like it's just a different variation on them. Harv and Harv's Island is also getting a kind of an overhaul. You can now invest bells to open shops, which will offer new hairstyles, new items, etc., etc. Storage is going to be up to 5,000, which is pretty much fantastic. Off the top of my head, I remember a couple of hundred, if even, as regular storage, but storage is now being up to 5,000, so that's pretty baller when it comes with that. Tom Nook is also going to have more exterior house designs and more exterior house decorations. I think it's more so not going to be stuff you place around the outside of your house that can just be put down anywhere else, but I feel like it's going to be more brickwork, more trimmings, more awnings, more accoutrement, or whatever you want to call it in there too. If you have the Pro decorating license as well, it's also going to add ceiling decor and wall accents too, so there's a little bit extra stuff there. There's new Nook Miles stuff going to be involved with crafting recipes, and now some of these crafting recipes are going to be cooking. So cooking is now going to be included with DIY recipes and all of that too. I know, thrilling, am I right? But hey, you can create some fancy ass looking stuff. Sure, it's not going to look as good as Final Fantasy 15's food, but you get the idea. Also, the maximum amount of bridges and inclines is increased from 8 to 10, so you can have a little bit more flexibility in designing an island, or ways to get around it and all too. There's going to be new fencing types, and some of them, possibly only some of the new ones, or possibly only some of the old ones, or some of both, can now be customized in some way. They don't tell you what it is just yet, but who knows? Maybe it's just different colors of the same ones, or maybe it's something else. Gyroids are back as well. Everybody loves a good gyroid, because why wouldn't you? And like I said, there's a few other small things included in there that aren't really worth mentioning. But now we're going to return to the other side of our oof sandwich. So we're going to go with our second negative oof when it comes to Animal Crossing on this section. And no, it's not that it's on the Switch. That was our first oof. So our second one is that there's going to be DLC. Specifically, this one is paid DLC. This is going to be $25, or you can rent it in the form of the rip-off expansion pass. More on that a little bit later. It's going to be called Animal Crossing New Horizons Happy Home Paradise. What a mouthful of a name. But the main premise of the DLC is that it's designing exotic vacation homes for other people. It's unclear if you can do one for yourself and all the fancy stuff therein, but the main one is you are the home designer and you are doing it for other people. So residents will show up with dream houses in mind and you have to help them realize it. You have to help them design it, you have to help them furnish it, whatever it is. And this unlocks new currency of some type as well as new furnishings, etc. It's unsure what the new currency is going to do, but it's the usual kind of thing. Just think of almost any other game you've played, especially if you've played an MMO, and just go from there. So it's also launching on November 5th, but as we did mention, it is not part of the 2.0 update. It is sold separately for $25 if you do buy it just as its quick little original thing. Now, next up, we got some FIFA to talk about. That's right, I know you probably never ever expected me to talk about FIFA, but, well, FIFA is one of the biggest yearly games, biggest amount of units sold per year. It is a yearly franchise, and of course, most amount of money in a lot of one of these yearly ones too. One of the other big ones to include up there, of course, is Call of Duty. So it's still pretty important and it's still pretty relevant to the industry and the news. So we do want to talk a little bit about it. Simply because EA has held the FIFA license for such a long time. I remember having a Super Nintendo game I got off my uncle, which was just FIFA International Football. I think it was, yeah, FIFA International Football on the Super Nintendo. And since then, they've had the FIFA license the entire time. And that was in the 90s. So here we are 25 plus years later, and here it's still possibly in their control, but maybe out of there. Because EA has trademarked a new term and a new name for their upcoming futuristic football games. It's going to be called EA Sports FC. And now, the reason for this, allegedly anyway, is it's reported that FIFA wanted double the price of their current agreement for their licensing of their name, players, numbers, blah, 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 whatever it is, all their branding and all of that, to renew when their contract comes back up with EA for their licensing for their games. Currently, it's at 500 million every 2 years, so they are asking for double the price at $1 billion every 2 years, or 2 billion every 4 years, whatever way you wanted to look at it. Simply because their places are reporting the frequency of it, of the renewals and all, and the renegotiations of all this at different times. But it just goes to show it's interesting just how much money and how big of the branding and how worldwide recognized this is. Because let's think about it. It's even down to stuff like the colors used, the logos used, the branding used, the pictures used, the iconography used on even the box. And even though almost everyone is probably synonymous with, turning on a FIFA game in the last 20 years and it's like EA Sports, it's in the game, or whatever their current one is. I don't play EA games anymore, but you get the idea. The point is, they're used to buying FIFA every year. Those people, maybe they go in and they see, oh, hang on, this doesn't have the same look on the box. It doesn't have the same logos. It's not called FIFA, it's called EA Sports FC. This must be like some cheap knockoff. Even if they do recognize EA and EA Sports and all of this stuff, it's the point of the brand. It's like Coca-Cola. It's like Pepsi. It's like my Ray-Bans. It's like Nintendo. Yes, I'm wearing a Nintendo t-shirt. It's like my drink, my Lucozade, my beautiful, beautiful Lucozade. It's like my Pokemon. It's like whatever it is. It's like my Samsung. It's all that kind of stuff, and it's all subtle. It's all there. That's why there are billions and billions of dollars pumped into all different types of marketing research, trends, sounds, looks, visuals, all of this stuff. And it's especially interesting to see how this is going to go down because of all of this. How much it's going to change, even if the game is identical and it doesn't change, or maybe it improves and gets better, just without the name, without the logos, the branding, all of that. It's interesting to see if it will be as easily recognized and picked up on the next few years when that does happen, if they don't go back to FIFA and pay their dues. Now, the big problem is if these EA Sports Fs or EA, what did we call it? EA Football FC or whatever, the EA Sports FC. It's going to be interesting to see if that tanks over the next couple of years, its first couple of years in. And then they go back to FIFA and say, yeah, we'll give you that $1 billion. And they'll say, well, we see your shit tanked without us. Now we want two. So yeah, that's going to be interesting because that could really screw them. They could essentially be almost locked out of the license. Because now I say locked out, I mean, sure, they can afford it. But the big question is, are they going to pay for it? Can they recoup that money? Do they want to acquiesce to the request or the demand when they're being bent over the barrel? Maybe they're going to have to stop football games altogether. Imagine that. Imagine a world, I don't even play them, but imagine a world without an EA Sports football game. I'm pretty sure I haven't played an EA football game since maybe 1999, maybe 2000. Was it FIFA 1999 or FIFA 2000 that had the really, really good diving mechanic on the N64? That was the last one I played. Imagine that. And even I say, a world without EA and FIFA, that's kind of crazy. Not to mention FIFA Ultimate Team. Who knows how that one's going to go? But anyway, let's let's get back to something a little bit more interesting. We're going to talk some Silent Hill. You know what? I debated you right there. We're going to talk Silent Hill-esque projects. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, Bokeh Game Studios, or Bokeh, or Bulk, or whatever you want to call it, I just call it Bokeh Game Studios. Bokeh, like the depth of field. This studio, Japanese developer, who was formed by the Silent Hill creator, I'll probably butcher this name as well, but Keiichiro Toyama, his studio has been confirmed by himself to be working on a new Silent Hill-esque project. This one is a new prototype horror game, and it's been in development and been under work and all since early 2021. Now I know we don't have much to go on, but it's getting its own segment as it is. The main reason for this is, one, first off, I just finished playing Silent Hill 4, The Room, the other day. Yesterday, actually, as I'm recording this video. Finished it for the first time. A little bit of a wholesome moment that we'll talk about at some other point in there too. But the point is, after Silent Hill 4, it's typically conceived and believed and whatnot that Silent Hill fell off, which is true. And this studio it was founded and being run and headed by the creator of Silent Hill 1. Now, that means it has potential. But of course, we have had problems like this in the past. Kojima, Koji Igarashi, Yu Suzuki, Mighty Number 9 dude, whose name I can't even remember. But you get the idea. Potential is there. Personally, I don't say give them the benefit of the doubt, but keep an eye on it, just to be safe, because we are in a very, very lackluster era when it comes to survival horror games. More so psychological survival horror games, because when you compare the likes of Resident Evil to Silent Hill, I've always said one is more of a, let's say Resident Evil in this case, is always more of a survival horror game, whereas Silent Hill is a bit more psychological horror / psychological survival horror. You've got typically have plenty of supplies, but they really play on the psychological aspect and the story and all that crazy stuff in there to get you to. But hell, it's worked really, really exceptionally well for their first three games, including Silent Hill 2, which many people, including myself, consider a psychological masterpiece and is one of my 10 greatest games of all time. So I'm going to try pull it back. I'm going to try not fanboy too much about it. But I'm keeping an eye on it. Because you never know. But anyway, moving on from Konami, or ex-Konami, I guess in that case, onto what is basically going to be ex-SEGA now. Unfortunately, Yakuza, Judgement, Super Monkey Ball, the creator of all of these, again, I will probably butcher this name, Toshihiro Nagoshi, is going to be leaving Sega after 30 years. Imagine, like I said, just some of those names. Let's run through them again. Yakuza, Judgement, Super Monkey Ball. I know, right? You've got Yakuza and Judgement over here, and then you've got Super Monkey Ball. I know, kind of crazy, right, when you think about it. But the point is, the creator of these series is now leaving Sega. It's unclear right now as to why or even what is next, but The reason why I'm mentioning this is it's my recent love and discovery relative, I guess. I think it was last year, maybe even the year before. I can't even remember. I want to say it was last year. Like discovery of my love for Yakuza just really, really made me mention this because, I mean, sure, like I said, it's only been a smaller amount of time. In fact, let me give you a little bit of a story as we go with this one. I originally used to hate Yakuza. I played a Yakuza demo back on the PS2. I hated it. Didn't like it at all. But then when all the Yakuza games started coming to PC, I had Yakuza 0. I think I had Yakuza Kiwami at that point, both of them, even though because they released in that order. And then I started Yakuza 0 and it blew my mind. And I've been in love with the series since. I played through Yakuza 0, Kiwami, Kiwami 2. I've recently finished Yakuza 3 Remastered. Yakuza 4 is next up on the list. I gotta do 4, 5, and then 6. Not gonna touch 7 and that series, or Judgement, but it's just important in that way to mention. But anyway, we can move on a little bit again, and we're going to talk some more Switch stuff here. I know, more oofs. We're going to talk about the Switch OLED. That's right, obviously this news is well out of date at this point, but we're going to talk about it covered and throw in a little bit of critique and opinion and all in there too. So the Switch OLED was announced a little while back. It did obviously launch fairly recently, and well, it got a little bit of a mixed reaction in some ways after its initial announcement. The main reasons for that is because it's got no extra power, no extra processing, no extra anything in that regard. And of course, no DLSS, because why would it? Because, you know, understanding technology and all of this crap. It has been slightly upgraded, or rather, there's one part of this bit has been slightly upgraded, the other is a significant one. It now has a 7-inch OLED screen compared to the extremely low quality budget ass LCD of the original model, which was absolutely god-awful garbage. It's now been increased to 64GB internal memory instead of the old reused 32GB from all the unsold Wii U's, but tish, never gonna let that one die, trust me. It also has a really, really slow LAN port built into it, replacing the internal USB port on the back that everyone used for a USB to Ethernet adapter anyway, but more on that a little bit later, considering the speed of the... Actually, you know what? Let's touch on it right now. If you weren't familiar with it, so the Switch has a USB 3.0 port, but it's hidden at the back, it's hidden in there, or at least the original dock had the 3.0 port anyway. The new one doesn't. But the problem is, even though it had a 3.0 port, it was limited through software to be a 2.0 port. So none of the 3.0 benefits would work for it, including the increased data transfer speeds and all as well. Now, of course, that's not very, very, very important when it comes to the likes of online gaming and whatnot, at least on the Switch, because they have software limited your download speeds. So there's an actual software cap capping your download speeds on the Switch OS itself. So in that way, it doesn't really matter. But I just think it's funny that everybody used that port at the back. I know in my dock, I have the USB to Ethernet adapter plugged in the back. The Ethernet adapter's in there too. So that one has been replaced with now a built-in network port. So essentially, it's exactly what everyone does for it, just actually built into the entire thing. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, now in a second actually, because I just want to take one quick second to remind everybody that the Switch OLED has no extra power and no DLSS. Now, so that slow LAN port that we talked about that was replacing the internal USB port and all, well, the main reason for that is because apparently the LAN port on the... Well, we all know the Switch can't run most games. Most modern games, anyway. So the reason for this has been added in there is because apparently Nintendo was asking developers, hey, can you put your modern games on the Switch? And they said, no, we either have to cut it down too much that it doesn't represent the vision of the product we want to put on there, or it would be too much work, or whatever it is, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And a lot of developers told Nintendo the only way you're going to get our modern games right now and going forward is in cloud versions. So to encourage cloud usage and encourage people to be able to play these cloud games, they have a LAN port. Of course, that begs the age-old question, if they have the original model, if they have a Lite, or if they're playing in handheld or portable mode. By the way, I never encourage anybody to play in handheld or portable mode. it's absolute trash and absolute garbage. The Switch OLED also has enhanced audio. It's got a wide adjustable stand because of the slightly bigger LCD, which means a little bit of extra weight on there too. And to be fair, the original the original, what do we call it? Stand on the other one was a bit small and a little bit flimsy, so it could have been a little bit questionable in there too. And let's be real, just let's go back for a second, talk about how the Switch can't run all those games if it's not going to use the cloud version. That's because the Switch OLED, as we mentioned, and can rub right back in again, has no extra power and no DLSS. So booyah. And just, of course, quick reminder, the Wi-Fi chip in all of them is terrible, but their LAN port is bad as well. So I mean, I guess lol, but when you think about it, well, I guess what would you need for game streaming? I mean, I never really looked into it too much because it's completely irrelevant here in the glorious PC gaming master race, or even any of the actual proper consoles that aren't laughed and ridiculed. Although that's not true. The Xbox Series X is a mess and just deserves ridicule and all of that too. But hey, no extra power and no DLSS. Now, having said all that, let's move on a little bit further to some positive, possibly good news. We're going to talk Brothers in Arms. Now, Brothers in Arms is an almost lost game series at this point, but it has been confirmed by Randy Pitchfork himself that a new Brothers in Arms game is in development. Now, this is not, as strange as this is, it's not the official announcement, because I'm sure they will fully announce it with a new title, a new name, blah, 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 some details, all of that good stuff, maybe some screenshots, some clips, some release dates or videos or whatever. But this technically doesn't constitute the official announcement, even though he did confirm it's in development. So, as far as Brothers in Arms go, the early games were good stuff, really good stuff. But if I remember correctly, a little bit later in the series, they kind of fell off and changed a little bit. Like I said, it's been a while. I do plan on playing and streaming some of them, so be sure to check that out too. Now, hopefully, if they do bring all this back, they don't go all big first-person shooter, boom, 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 rooty, tooty, pointy, shooty action game. I don't want Brothers in Arms Modern Warfare. I don't want Brothers in Arms Battlefield. I don't want Brothers in Arms Modern Call of Duty. I still want the old school style, team-based, tactical World War II gameplay. Just updated with better graphics, better visuals, more options, more gameplay mechanics, better AI, all of this stuff. Yes, fucking please. Absolutely. Now let's loop around, see what I did there, and hit up Deathloop, because we're going to talk about Deathloop. Now I know this is kind of almost potentially possibly irrelevant at the moment, but not really, because, well, time, it's a loop. We got to close and we got to do what we do. But anyway, Deathloop released last month for PC and PS5, ergo it is not an exclusive game. Quick important thing to note there as well, because that game is, or that word and term is bandied around a lot incorrectly. Now, the reason why this one is coming up here is Microsoft obviously own Bethesda, and Bethesda, by proxy, they own Arcane Studios, the developer for Deathloop. But yet, even though Microsoft and / Xbox technically now own it, even though the game is on PC, well, they're honoring the contract that Sony paid for pre-buyout with the timed exclusivity. Now, people, of course, had been wondering what's the deal, what does that mean for Deathloop, and what does that mean for potential on Xbox consoles? Well, it looks like Deathloop won't be on Xbox for, according to this, at least 1 year, aka at least September 2022, I should say. Now, the reason for at least 2022 is if it would be, maybe there's some clause in there that they can't announce that it will be 1 year. Maybe there's some clause in there that Sony have the option to renew it or extend it or whatever it is. Kind of like they did with Final Fantasy VII Remake. Because that one it was very, very clear that it was a 1 year timed exclusive. It was on the front of the box. Literally on the front of the box of the game. And then 1 year down the line, straight after that, everybody was expecting a PC and Xbox announcement. And then suddenly, instead, we get, hey, it's coming to PS5 in a few months, it's getting an upgrade, and it's going to have this, like, extra DLC kind of thing. And then suddenly, all of that is, oh, well, now it's timed exclusive for 6 months until December. of 2021, which of course is coming soon. So yeah, that's promising stuff when you think about it. At least for us PC gamers. Well, it should be in regards of Final Fantasy VII, at least anyway. But it's kind of a bad game. I'd rather just play the old one again because yeah, it's just better in practically every way, except for graphics, I suppose. But well, you can't win them all. But speaking of possibly winning them all, or never seeing them coming, or whatever it is, we're talking Persona. Now, we're going to talk about the Persona 25th anniversary. And this one, of course, is starting in September of 2021. So yes, this did officially start last month. This was announced back in August by Sega and Atlus. And they announced that there was basically going to be, as a 25th anniversary celebration, they were going to have an entire year's worth of celebrations with new stuff and new announcements and new whatever it is every single month. Some of the stuff we've seen so far, there's been a new concert announcement, there's been like multi-world stores or multi-region stores, whatever we call them, new brands that they're crossing over with, new products, all of this stuff that they're selling, worldwide, both just locally and in different ones too. But that's, one or two little ones here. Like I said, a whole year's worth of new announcements, updates, fun, and surprises. New merch we've already talked about. They've included stuff like main character poster sets and all as well, which includes Persona 1, both Persona 2 games, both the main characters for Persona 3/Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4, Persona 5, and 2 unrevealed characters as of yet. Now, what could that be? Well, I'm thinking Persona 6 with both male and female main characters choosable, selectable from the get-go. None of this extra stuff. Likely won't be, or sorry, like I said, will likely be the Persona 6 ones. But on top of that as well, at the same time as all of this was announced and going on, there was a job listing on the Atlus website, which has also confirmed that they are recruiting for Persona 6. So this is likely only in the very, 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 very early planning stages at this point for Persona 6. And some of the stuff they have on there is, and their details that they had on that job description, is that they were looking to outdo Persona 5 and recruit new people to think outside the box in new and different and creative ways. They've also announced that the series, just Persona in general, has sold 15 million copies combined to this date. Almost half of those, considering when you think of all the sales and numbers and all, almost half of those at this point should be Persona 5/Persona 5 Royal. As far as Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden combined sales should be, that should be 2.5 to 3 million, if not higher. We got like 1.2 million on the Vita over those 7 or 8 years. We've over 1 million copies sold on PC in just over 1 year. And then whatever's on the PS2 and whatever's been sold on PC since that announcement. But yeah, it's looking good. But speaking of Sega stuff that's not looking good, and we're not talking about the Yakuza, Judgement, Super Monkey Ball creator and all even. No, we're going to talk a little bit about Lost Judgment, the Yakuza spin-off series, now onto their second game, because their original one was just Judgment, and now they've got Lost Judgment, which just released fairly recently as well. Now, here's the weird thing about this. So Lost Judgment released on various different platforms, multiple different Xboxes, including Xbox One, Xbox Series S, and Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and believe it or not, Stadia, of all things. That's right. Now, I expected this to be, because it was on Stadia, a 1-year timed exclusive deal, because, money from Google and whatnot before coming natively to local PC hardware. However, it turns out that it will likely never come to PC for the absolute weirdest and most bonkers reason you can think of. And this is the same, of course, for the first game, just regular Judgment, because that also did not have a PC version. But because of the reason which we're about to get into, Sega have basically confirmed that it's almost certain that the Judgment series is going to be left and die off after this second game, when it's such a weird reason why. And that reason, of course, is the actor who plays the main character. I probably butcher this one too, but Takuya Kimura, you can judge me for that one if you want. His talent agency, which is Johnny and Associates, or Johnny and Co, or whatever it's properly translated as, it depends on who you ask and what the translation is notoriously protective of their clients' images to the point where they basically don't allow any of their images to be published in many different ways. Bear with me because we're going on a ride here. This one's going to be crazy because Sega wants to release a Steam version because they know how big the PC market is. I can't remember if it was Capcom or Sega who just announced recently that 50% of their sales and profits come from PC, and then 50% of their sales and profits come from all the other consoles combined. Actually, you know what? I think that one might have been Capcom, but it could have been Sega because Sega has been on a fucking roll with their games lately. But yeah, the really, really weird thing about it is Johnny's don't allow their clients' images to be on a PC connected to the internet. Let me say that again so you didn't misunderstand, you didn't mishear it. Johnny's talent agency does not allow their clients' images to be on a PC, stored on a PC, connected to the internet. Like it's fucking 2002. So, just to give you an idea, right? In an official, if you look up, go and Google it after, you pause this as soon as I finish explaining this. Google it just to see how crazy it is because this is legit. If you look at the official PR stuff for Judgment 1, the press releases, the staff, the launch parties, the cast parties, all of that stuff. If you go and look them up, even in stuff in like Famitsu magazine and officially provided to news and article websites and all too, literally the actor is covered out in gray or red silhouettes in official PR materials provided by Sega / the talent company to give to all these media outlets. He isn't even allowed to follow his own wife on social media like Instagram. Who is running this talent agency? It's literally like it's 2002 or the 1997 and the internet is just first becoming a thing and they don't want everything stolen. It is absolutely bonkers. Sega aren't budging on this as they want a PC version and would rather kill off the series than just let it go on anymore because they know they're losing so much money. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. But anyway, speaking of which, we can move on to something else. We're going to talk a little bit about Company of Heroes 3. Now, again, granted, this news is a little bit old here, but out of nowhere, Sega and Relic, the developers of the Company of Heroes series, have announced a new game in the series. And Italy seems to be the location and the big focus this time round, with the option to play for multiple different armies. Now, assuming they all have their own campaign rather than just the same main story, or maybe you're fighting the same mission but on one side and one on, like, I don't know, you destroy Rome and protect Rome. Basically, you get the idea. Now, it seems like it's a long way off. It is releasing next year at some point. It's still a relatively long way off when you think about it, especially considering this news is, from summertime. But it's still a decent way away, especially considering that we might get a big bunch of delays and all with that too, which seems to be all the rage these days. But of course, it is nice to see the series isn't dead and it is coming back. Company of Heroes 1 was a big deal back in the day in the mid-2000s when it launched. Many people credit it as the game that reinvented and reinvigorated the RTS genre and the RTS games and brought complete life and attention back to the series. So it's pretty much true. It's pretty much true. I love the first one anyway. I didn't get a chance to play the second one, even though I own it. And while it did feel like it simplified things a little bit compared to previous games, like say, I don't know, Command and Conquer and some of the other stuff too, since it pretty much ushered in the one squad equals one unit type of gameplay. Think Halo Wars, think obviously Company of Heroes 1, you get that kind of thing. There's also it did more for the genre, because if Company of Heroes 1 didn't kind of blow up when it did, who knows how RTS games in general could have been. There's a pre-alpha tech demo that you can test via Games Together. That is GAMES, the number 2, GETHER. I don't know if this one is still even available, guys. I wrote these notes ages ago, but give it a try anyway. I mean, I'm going to keep an eye on the game. Hopefully it's going to be good. Maybe I'll stream Company of Heroes 1 and Company of Heroes 2 in the run-up to Company of Heroes 3, and then That one's going to be pretty fucking fun. Or so we can hope. Now, we're going to talk. This one, I don't even know what to say about this, right? We're going to talk Xbox Series X. But not really. Because we're going to talk about the mini fridge. That's right. There is a mini Xbox Series X fridge. It looks like a mini, or looks like an Xbox Series X. I guess it would be a bigger version because the fridge is going to be bigger than it. But you might remember last year or the year before, whenever it was they showed it off, Microsoft had the giant, proper full size version of the Xbox Series X fridge. Well, now they're having a mini fridge version for everybody. $100, €100. I think it was 89 pounds or something like that anyway. It's out in December. You can pre-order around multiple different countries around the world, including some of the big ones like the US, Canada, Ireland, the UK, lots of different European countries and all too. Looks like an Xbox Series X, but a little bit bigger. I think they said you can fit about 8 different drinks in there, 8 different cans of drink or whatever. I don't know. I'm toying with the idea of buying one, but I've had 2 mini fridges in my life, and I've always had very bad luck with them. So I think I might just skip it because YOLO. I don't know. Speaking of things we're going to skip pretty much, or everyone is pretty much going to skip this next thing we're talking about. Resident Evil Reverse. Yes, that thing you completely forgot existed because I can't blame you for it. Resident Evil Reverse is the online multiplayer component of Resident Evil 3 Remake, which you might remember launched. Jesus. Wait a minute. Yeah, that launched last year. Resident Evil 3 Remake launched last year, 2020. And, or yeah, Resident Evil 3 Remake launched in 2020. And this Reverse thing was delayed from its launch multiple different times. And now this one is just developed or delayed to at least 2022 at some point. So yeah, Resident Evil Reverse, which looks absolutely awful and no one wants whatsoever, and has already been delayed multiple times, both to backlash, both to feedback, and just looking absolute shite, has been delayed again as of July 15th. So this news is a little bit out of date and it is delayed to 2022. Honestly, at this point, hopefully they just write it off completely and cancel the shit out of it because they're wasting time, they're wasting development resources, they're wasting all of that. And they've even gone out, and I think I covered it in a previous one, that Sega, that Capcom announced that they're going to be putting more development time, cost, effort, resources into Resident Evil 8 DLC, which they're lying about and said that everybody wanted more Ethan Winters DLC. Probably the worst main character in any Resident Evil game, but I mean, it's if it's a choice between Reverse or Resident Evil 8 DLC, I'm going with Resident Evil 8 DLC. It's not really saying much. But having said that, we can talk a little about Xbox and PlayStation, or Xbox versus PlayStation, Xbox commenting on PlayStation, whatever way you want to look at it. This time, it's in the sense of the DualShock, or the DualSense, the DualShock 5, I like to call it sometimes, versus the Xbox joypad, which, as we know, the Xbox Series X slash Xbox Series Mess joypad hasn't been much of a massive improvement over the Xbox One series joypads on there too. But this time, Phil Spencer has hinted that maybe at some point in the future, some of the advanced DualSense features may come to Xbox joypads in some way, shape, or form. It would be later since they would have to redesign and re engineer and do all this stuff to the Xbox joypad simply because the DualSense has some more motors, it has some resistive, the resistive triggers and all of that stuff. And the Xbox, it's just literally not possible to do them in its current form because it doesn't have something that can replicate that. They need to redesign it, sell it separately, or upgrade it just overall and add them into it so that it could be done later. Personally, having tried the DualSense in several different games, most notably, I guess, it would be including Astro's Playroom, it is extremely overrated and an absolute waste of time even talking about it. The only people saying how revolutionary it is are the absolute fanboys. It is as irrelevant as HD Rumble on the Switch. That's right, you remember HD Rumble? They made a big deal of it before it came out. Then everyone touched it, used the Joy-Con, used the Pro Controller, and realized HD Rumble was a scam. And it's absolute shite. The only time that the PS5 and the DualSense ever got me in a way was literally the very first time I used it booting up Astro's Playroom. They ask you to squeeze in the two triggers, L2 and R2, just to boost up the rocket thing, and it just locks in the controllers and all. It was like, oh, because I wasn't expecting it. And then every single time after that, literally every single time after that, it was just, this is inconvenient and annoying. It's interrupting. It's not giving me more immersion. It's not making me feel more. The rumble, I don't get all this rumble. When your character walks with his left foot, the left side rumbles. Then he walks with his right foot, the right foot rumbles. It's completely irrelevant. Doesn't give me more immersion. Doesn't give me more anything. And in fact, in some of the other ways, like say, I think it was Metro, where when one of your guns jam, the actual controller jams up and you can't press it. I don't want, or there's other games where the longer you hold the trigger, the more the gun fires, and then of course the more more pressure you need to pull it in and to keep it firing. I don't want consoles and controllers and input methods interfering and hampering my ability to play the game. It's not more immersive, it's just plain annoying. We're moving from Xbox to PlayStation. Let's hit up some more Nintendo stuff. Or rather, in this case, it's more so the Nvidia Shield stuff we're going to talk about. Because you might remember the Nvidia Shield TV, which uses the full speed Nvidia X1 chip. So it's basically a more powerful version of the Switch. Because the Switch, even in docked mode, uses a 30% underclocked X1. And then when you put it in portable mode, it's even underclocked again, which is why the Nvidia X1 is even better than what's in the Switch. It's the proper version of it. Now, in China, they have the Nvidia Shield TV, and it had officially licensed HD Wii ports. That's right, officially licensed HD Wii ports of select games over there. Now, these were better than the Wii, obviously, and of course the Wii U version, simply because the Wii U version was just a digital copy of the Wii over HDMI. But these ones had been modified and tweaked and all a little bit to have proper HD 1080p support. So that's pretty curious when you think of, I mean, the market it's in and what Nintendo actually officially licensed and all over there too. It really just goes to show that at the end of the day, it's really only down to the market and what they perceive and all as well. Because if they were really as protective as they say about their own thing and their own IPs and consoles and licenses and games being on there and all as well, there's no way in hell this would happen. But yeah, this happened, so deal with that, fanboys, anyway. But back to our actual story here. This program that brought the HD Wii games to the Nvidia Shield, it ran for a bit over 3 years, but as of August, it was officially ending. So it is pretty much on its deathbed and it's on the way out. Now, there is one or two things to note about here. No details or dates on when you can no longer even download the games, like when the servers go off or anything like that. No idea has been given, no dates on all of these, or even how long the servers stay up for authentication. Because typically with a lot of digital games, you have to authenticate them, even on consoles, you have to authenticate them at least once a month, or once every 28 days or something like that, just to be able to renew the license essentially. And of course, let this serve as a big reminder that things like this, servers, authentication, CMOS issues, all of that, can shut down on all platforms, including the Switch. I don't care if it's the most popular game system or one of the most popular ones and all as well. They did the same thing for the Wii, and that sold more than the Switch as of right now. Last I checked, the Switch was at 89 million units. The Wii was at 104, and they killed off that one eventually. The Switch is going eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 5 years from now, maybe not even in the next console generation, but maybe the one after. And then, well, then you're in trouble. And then I fucking told you so. Especially because the Switch has so many games that are not all on the game card and require a little bit of a download. Those games will become absolutely useless. Not even paperweights, because the Switch game cards are like 2 grams. It's ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous stuff, we're going to talk Final Fantasy. Now, this time, specifically, we're talking, well, Final Fantasy X. Or rather, Final Fantasy X-3. That's right, you heard me correctly. Final Fantasy X-3. We've already had Final Fantasy X. We've already had Final Fantasy X-2. But it turns out we may eventually, hopefully not, be getting Final Fantasy X-3. Yes, that even kills me just to say out loud that that could potentially be a real thing. So it turns out that the writer for both Final Fantasy games as well, I'll probably butcher this one too, but Kusige Nojima, let's try that one again. Yeah, maybe that's it, but if not, whatever. He has a full synopsis done for Final Fantasy 13-3. Now, it's not 100% exact plot points, step by step, storyboard by storyboard and all, but he's got a full synopsis for it. And then he can fill in the details, the who's, the hows, the whys, the whats, the blah, 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 all of this as well. Now, I don't know how this would go over, considering how Final Fantasy X-2 went over, and it was already questionable at best, let alone Squeenix's track record ever since, well, let's go with ever since post-Final Fantasy X. Modern Final Fantasy games, modern other games when it comes to Square Enix as well. It's just not in a good time. It's just not gonna work for me, dog. But you know what may or may not work for me? This next one, this is a very monumental one we're going to talk about for just a second, and is God of War. You're probably wondering, Q, what are you doing talking about God of War? You don't even like God of War. Well, we're talking about God of War officially being announced and receiving a native PC port. That's right, let me say that again. God of War 2018, the ex-PS4 exclusive, which is no longer an exclusive and is now a multi-platform game, or will be as of January 14th, 2022. It's coming to PC. Now, the port is going to be handled by Jetpack Interactive, who have various mid-tier or, sadly, even a couple of low-tier ports in their background, which is very, very strange. You would think that Sony, for such a big, high-profile game like God of War, might want a better studio involved in this. Sure, maybe Sony Santa Monica aren't going to do it themselves, but they just recently bought Nixxes. Or Nixies. Maybe they could do it. Now, granted, this port has probably been in development for much longer than the Nixxes purchase, which was fairly recently, over the last couple of months. But you get the idea. There's even studios out there that they could have went to with higher profile names. As long as they don't go anywhere near Iron Galaxy, which unfortunately is doing the Uncharted 4/Lost Legacy PC port. I'm waiting for that to be an absolute disaster. That's a Batman. That's the development studio and the company that did the PC version of Batman Arkham Knight. Just imagine what that says about all of this. But I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping for God of War. We have Uncharted coming soon. We have God of War. Next up, hopefully, The Last of Us Remastered. Because real quick, before we move on just for a second, it's important to note that myself included, specifically we'll use myself as the example, back when Sony started announcing PC games or their PS4 games and first party games coming to PC, I always expected we'd get like second tier stuff and below. I didn't think we'd ever get first tier, top tier stuff. I always expected, Horizon Zero Dawn, which was obviously the first announcement, then say Days Gone. Thought we might get Ratchet and Clank. There might have been a couple of other games in there too, but there was 4 games or 4 series I specifically expected us never to get because they would be their top tier reasons to buy a console kind of thing that would be exclusive, truly exclusive to them. And I thought those 4 would be God of War, Uncharted, The Last of Us, and Spider-Man. Now, given the fact we have 2 of those, and arguably the one that is the biggest of all 4 of them in God of War coming to PC, and not only we have Uncharted as well, it's only a matter of time before we have... I don't know if we'll ever see Spider-Man or The Last of Us, or I shouldn't say The Last of Us. I don't think we'll ever see Spider-Man on PC. I don't know, I could be wrong. I mean, all bets are off at this point, because, frankly... simply because they're doing God of War, let alone God of War and Uncharted, it truly seems to me that there is a legitimate chance that every one of them will come over. Spider-Man, The Last of Us included. And I just finished, I platinumed Spider-Man Remastered like 2 weeks ago, and I just finished Miles Morales a few days ago, and honestly I don't really care, but... The Last of Us, I really, really, really enjoy. The first one, the only one that matters, Last of Us Remastered. Put that on PC. Absolutely. I would love that. That's a game I really like and really enjoy in a better form. Hell yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, Let's move on, shall we? We're going to talk a little bit about Dead Space, and this one is the Dead Space remake, not remaster, not remastered. There's a Dead Space remake officially announced and confirmed for PS5, PC, and Xbox Series mess. Thankfully, it is not going to be held back and limited by the old piece of shit hardware and them Jaguars in Xbox One and PS4. It's good to see. It's good to see. You love to see it. But we don't have too many details at the moment, just one or two things, including that it's going to have completely overhauled zero G gameplay because there are a couple of zero gravity environments. So they're going to change that. Personally, I didn't think it was too bad in how they did the original one, but maybe it's more free flowing and more free moving and whatnot rather than just jumping from, one platform to another. So maybe that's going to have a good bit to play in there. And also it's going to have a much better, more in-depth dynamic damage and dismemberment system. Yeah, whoa, dynamic dismemberment damage. Let's get some alliteration in there, shall we? Because, well, we got to do what we got to do. I am Irish. We got to bring in the whole literary genius part of it. But it's kind of weird because at the same time, the next two things we're going to talk about in this Dead Space remake segment are almost like diametrically opposed because on a weird almost flip flop, it's going to be restoring some of the cut content from the original that either was included and then just hidden away in the files or something, or else it was in part of the development process but was cut for whatever reason. So it's going to be curious to see how that affects it and how that affects the story and whatnot. But at the same time, they've also noted that EA have said parts of the game will be changed to fit modern sensibilities. A lot of the time that means like censoring crap stuff or offensive stuff. I mean, fuck, even GTA, we'll get to that now in a minute, is caving to this shit these days. Absolutely madness. Absolute madness. Fucking politically correctness in the modern day. The world's gone mad and it's absolutely disgusting. But anyway, if you're interested in a Dead Space remake, or Dead Space Respace. I don't know. I was going to get it wrong in a weird way and try to finally get that one out. But if you do want to play or are interested in the Dead Space remake, supposedly it's going to be targeting a late 2022 release date. Now, me personally, I'll have to acquire it because EA and whatnot too, but it is what it is. Speaking of shithole companies, we're going to move on from EA to Activision Blizzard. Now, I don't even know where to start with this one because it's all over the place. There's so much to cover, too much to cover, pretty much. And at the same time, well, I can't really do it justice, can I? I mean, it's also ongoing and all as well. So right now, if you've been paying attention over the last couple of months, there's so many reports of all sorts of sexual harassment, types of abuse, mistreatment, all of this stuff, and they're being sued over all of this and even more. Now, it gets kind of crazy as well because when they were looking for, the reports and the files and all on these when they were reported, these incidents were reported, the people they were reported about and all, human resources was even caught shredding all of these reports just to protect the company and the top level people involved. And of course, when it comes to this, high up, key important people, over 20 of them at this point, have left to try protect themselves and distance themselves from the company and the whole situation. These include like top level executives, top level producers, top level directors, all of this kind of stuff. It's not just random coder number 74 that's leaving. No, no. It's high end stuff. So it's pretty oof in there. Now this also, if you play any Blizzard games, you may have noticed that changes have and or are being made to multiple different games to remove references to people or things or places or whatever that are tied to Activision and or Activision Blizzard and have potentially be part of these like lawsuits and whatnot to some of the people. In fact, you've got stuff like World of Warcraft with character names, quest names, item names, things like that, dialogue, references, and all. And even McCree from Overwatch is being renamed to Colt Cassidy instead of Jesse McCree, who was some high level person at Overwatch, at Activision Blizzard for a long time. And just to show you how Never simp for a company, guys. Never simp for a company. I don't care who it is. I don't care. You like people look at me. I don't simp for Nvidia. The facts speak for themselves. But if they put out a different, if AMD put out a better product, we go with that. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Let's look at whatever. You've got all the PC fanboys. You've got all or the PC Master Race guys. You've got all the PS5 fanboys. You've got the Nintendrones. You've got the Xbox. Whatever it is, don't simp for a company. They're just out for your money and shit at the end of the day, and they don't care who they hurt, who they fuck over, both literally and figuratively. But let me give you a great example. Human Resources, as we mentioned, was caught shredding documents to protect the company of all the reports of stuff that happened because it would have been bad for the high level people and the company. And on top of that as well, they're trying to pause. They were trying to pause the lawsuit. As of the time of recording this video, it was just announced that the motion to pause the lawsuit was rejected within the last couple of hours. So you get an idea. They're really, really just trying to look out for themselves, and it's scummy shit when it comes down to it at the end of it. But never simp for a company, guys. They've got billions of dollars. They don't need you. They don't care about you. They just want your money. But moving away from Activision Blizzard stuff, we go to storage for a second. Well, we all know that the modern, at least console anyway, storage space for these current gen consoles is a little bit messy because, well, we'll get to that now anyway, shall we? So, the Xbox Series mess this time. We all know the PS5 uses a standard off-the-shelf PCIe 4.0 drive, which is rated to be at least 5500 Mbps. Better is always better, or faster is always better, preferably with a heatsink. But it's a standard generic part. It's a standard off-the-shelf part. Xbox Series Mess, on the other hand, we all know has their little proprietary cards that are supposedly PCIe 4.0, but they run at PCIe 3.0 speeds. It's kind of weird. But the key important thing is it's like this hot swappable little almost memory card kind of dealio. Plugs right into the back of it, and it matches the power and performance of the internal drive exactly, so you can play all your current gen games off there. You don't just store them like you would on an old school SSD or old school hard drive or whatever it is. You can actually play them off it, and it's hot swappable. Just bring it to another friend's house, pop it right in, and boom, away you go. Now, Xbox already had a 1 terabyte version of these. Just for comparison's sake, if you have an Xbox Series X, it has a 1 terabyte drive in there. But you can get another one of these single 1 terabyte SSD expandable storage units. And the crazy thing about this is the price, really, a little bit. They're $220, which is a little bit more, well, that's the official retail price, but it's a little bit more expensive than it should be. Not by much, but it is a little bit more, mainly because of proprietariness, and it's not just a standard one. But you get the idea. It's like when you take the price of the drive, the speed of the drive, the capacity of the drive, it should be a little bit cheaper than this, even if you buy it at, say, like retail or whatever. But, proprietary stuff in there too. It is kind of interesting to note that Microsoft have said that while they are partnering with Seagate for the official ones of these, they've said that other companies can develop them too, but so far no one has done it. And they say, oh, that will drive the price down. And honestly, I don't expect anyone else to do it at this point. It's just not worth it because they're going to sell them in such small quantities that it would just be almost a loss to do so. But anyway, we have these drives and all too. But now that Microsoft have announced 2 new ones as well. So they've announced that they're going to be releasing a 512 gigabyte version and a 2 terabyte version. So the 512 version is going to launch in mid-November for $140, and the 2 terabyte version is going to be in December at some point for $400. Now you may think that sounds a bit expensive. $400 for a 2 terabyte expansion, close to the price of a new console. That is kind of true. I mean, $400 is $400. An Xbox Series X will cost you $500. Now, here's something that you guys don't understand. Well, if you're a console guy out there, I don't know when you started playing. I don't know if you started playing on the Super Nintendo. I don't know if you started playing on the PS1, the PS2, the OG Xbox 180, the Dreamcast, the 360, the PS3, the Xbox One, PS4, or if you're just a current generation only gamer. I'm going to break it down and hit you with some facts on how this technology works and all as well, okay? You may be used to cheaper parts. Consoles are cheap entry level stuff for a reason. That's why you can buy them so cheap. But when it comes to current gen, it is the only, I guess I would say only, it is the only console generation of note, at least anyway, that has any type of semblance of current generation hardware. Typically, when you buy a console, it's already several years out of date. The PS4 and Xbox One, when they launched in 2013, they were low end stuff from like 2011, which is why they've been so bad for like, their entire lifespan, and they're just a joke of consoles. But even though the power and performance of the Xbox Series X and the PS5 is still relatively low, it's still around the lower mid range, we'll call it, graphics card, PC graphics card, and PC performance from about 3 years ago. You get the idea. But the one thing that is slightly more modern is the SSD in both of them. Now, the one in the Xbox Series X, or Xbox Series Mess in general, is a little bit older because it's a PCIe Gen 3.0 because of their speeds and all. This is a little bit more modern than you would expect compared to all the other hardware and all in there. So the price does reflect this. It's still relatively high end. It's maybe 2 notches from the top. It's not second place, it's maybe third place. But then, just by comparison, let's look at the PS5 for a second. The PS5's SSD is a low-end PCIe 4.0 drive, aka 5500 Mbps. So it's like second-tier stuff because, top-end stuff is like 7000 Mbps, which is the stuff we use here on PC. I got 2 of them in this computer. My PC boots up in less than 4 seconds. Deal with it. I have better loading times than PS5 games. And they're supposedly optimized for this magic SSD, and everything runs better on my computer. It is what it is. But the point is, using the PS5 as the example, those drives are expensive. The ones that are equal and recommended are expensive. The ones that are even better, like say 7000 Mbps drives, they're even more expensive. So, yes, the storage is a little bit expensive, but you, as console guys, you never truly understand just how far behind you are when it comes to your hardware, even when it launches. And this is a great example of that. Of course, you don't have to buy this. I know I personally won't be expanding my Xbox Series X or my PS5 storage. I have a small external SSD, although I guess I was going to say I have a small external SSD for my PS5, but then I just realized that's only for storing PS4 games, not even for storing PS5 games. It's just for storing PS4 games. And I only did it when I was transferring them over from my PS4 Pro, really, but I just realized how few I want to actually keep on there, and I've transferred the like 2 I want to keep on there onto it, so you get the idea. But congratulations, guys. You're no longer several years out of date with every aspect of it. I mean, hell, you guys were using an original hard drive. In 2013, when the PS4 and the Xbox One released, you guys were using regular hard drives for years. Regular hard drives. The same interface and same speed that have been around for 20 years. Imagine that. And hell, if you want to go with, when the hard drive was invented, you're using like 70-year-old tech. But anyway, I digress. That is beside the point. But what's not beside the point is Project Zero. And we're going to talk, or that's Fatal Frame for some of you guys out there, but we're going to talk Project Zero, Maiden of Blackwater. Now, this game was a previous failure on the previous failure that was the Wii U. And while not a great game, it was certainly not a bad game. Just kind of decent. But as a relative thing, it was also probably the worst in the series. There's 5 main games in the series. I've played 4 of them, and it's arguably the worst in the series. The only reason I haven't played number 4 is because it's a Japanese only one, and I haven't got around to ever emulating it with the fan translated patch. But anyway, the interesting thing about this one is it's coming to Xbox One, Xbox Series Mess, PS4, PS5, Switch, and of course, most importantly, PC. Now, I know this was announced a few months ago, and we've had a couple of updates since then, and in fact, as of the time of recording this video, this game is going to launch tomorrow. So yes, you just to give you a little bit of an idea of when this was recorded and how far along we are. It's going to boast improved visuals, of course, most importantly, improved frame rate, new costumes, that is, including no Nintendo costumes, even for the Switch version, until, of course, they are modded into the PC version, which is the only one that really matters. Glorious PC Gaming Master Race, boyos. But on top of there, the series producer has also said that he is hoping that with the combined sales of and interest in all the remaster and all the new ports and all the new platforms will lead to interest in a new game and interest in the series, so that they can pitch and justify bringing out a new game. He already has said just yesterday or the day before that the response to the remaster and multi-platform ports for all of this is far exceeding expectations, and that's going to be taken into consideration when looking at the sales, how it goes, and possibly pitching a new game. Hopefully it goes well. I am a fan of the Project Zero series. Just last year, at the end of 2020, I played through the first three games back to back to back. I didn't finish the third one because I was playing them back to back to back, so I did get a little bit burnt out halfway through the third one. I played the first one again. I haven't played it in years. Loved it. Played the second one. Loved it. And then moved on to the third one. Wasn't bad or anything like that. It was still a good game. I just got a little bit burnt out playing them back to back to back. I will go back to it eventually. See, I had to get that one right in my head. But it's going to be good. And like I said, I've played Project Zero. I've bought this one on PC. I'm going to mess around with it a little bit, but it is what it is. But having said all that, we have Life is Strange news here at the moment. Now, not Life is Strange True Colors. I know I just kind of streamed that once or twice. I've really lost interest in that game, but it's still installed. Maybe I'll get around to it eventually. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about Life is Strange Remastered Collection, which includes the original game and Life is Strange Before the Storm. Thankfully, it does not include Life is Strange 2 at all. It's basically just the Chloe and Max story in there, and whatever other characters you want to include with it too. Now, this was originally going to be available separately or included with the Ultimate Edition of Life is Strange True Colors, and it's going to have stuff like improved lighting, motion capture, facial animation, etc., etc. Now, you may or may not have known, but this has been delayed twice now to February. Well, I shouldn't say delayed twice, because initially it wasn't supposed to launch. A lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people assume that it was originally going to launch with the Ultimate Edition of True Colors back in the start of September, which is not the case. It was always going to be included with the Ultimate Edition, but not launch at the same time. So if you bought the Ultimate Edition, you would get access to the Remastered Collection when the Remastered Collection launched at a later date. I believe it was originally going to be October, maybe November at the time. But now it has been delayed to February 2022, so I guess it does only have one delay in there too. I'm not sure if I'm going to buy this myself. A game like this, unless I went back and made conscious note and decision with my old playthrough and checked what I did and all that, and then consciously went and picked different options. If I was to replay this game again, I picked these natural options, what felt like the right option, the right choice at the time and all for me. I would most likely pick the majority of the same options again without even realizing it. So, for me, I think Life is Strange Remastered would not be a good purchase for me personally, but I could definitely see how someone else playing it or watching someone else playing it could potentially appeal that way, because you see how someone else interprets situations, how they react to things like that. And well, while it ain't for me, I guess Punny's gonna love it. But moving on from that one, we're going to hit up something coming sooner than, well, what we just talked about, but a little bit more disastrous, probably. We're going to talk Halo Infinite. Now, Halo Infinite is all over the place these days, or as I like to call it, the disaster continues. Still, after a year-long delay, yes, that's right, a year-long delay, this game was supposed to launch with the Xbox Series mess last year, obviously on PC as well, but even with 1 year delay, we have significant problems on the horizon. No campaign co-op is going to be included at launch. Forge mode, completely, is not going to be included at launch. And ray tracing is still going to not be included at launch. All of these three things are going to be added in patches post-launch. Now remember, this is even after the 1 year delay. Even after the 1 year delay. Imagine that. Imagine the state this game almost launched in last year. And honestly, if there wasn't all that feedback and straight up backlash from when they showed it off last E3 and it got panned, I'm almost convinced they would have launched it in whatever state it was in. And Jesus Christ, just imagine. Halo would never recover. Halo would never recover. 100%. As someone who's been ride or die with Halo since day one, this just, no, just ridiculous. Halo would have been done. And this worries me greatly as well. In fact, I am already 100% convinced and committed that this game is going to be an absolute shit show mess on PC. I'm convinced on a technical aspect it's going to be broken in practically every way, or so many different ways, so many important ways as well. And not to mention all the stuff that we just covered in it too. That's all worrying. And it's all because they're focusing on multiplayer. Multiplayer more than anything, more than everything, all to milk money. That's all it is. And especially because the technical tests that I have taken part in, one of them of course was just against bots, and there was the other multiplayer one and all. It was questionable on the gameplay front of it, and they were also buggy messes. I realized they were technically beta tests and whatnot, but you get the idea. It has me extremely worried, and at this point I'm 100% convinced I have bought what's going to be a disaster of a game for the first couple of weeks, if not longer. But we'll find out on December 8th. We're almost there, sadly. Or let's just put it this way. Come December 8th, we'll finally know if all the fears are unfounded or if I fucking called it. But speaking of other stuff that's going to be a disaster and all as well, we're going to talk Saints Row. Because in this case, Saints Row, you may have heard, is getting a remake slash reboot slash reimagining, whatever it is. The big problem with this is Saints Row has always been wacky, always been out there, and it's always been kind of pushing the envelope of what they can and can't say and can and can't do just a little bit. It's nowhere near on the same tier as doing it as Grand Theft Auto, for example. More on that, again, a little bit later, as I promised. But with this one, with the Saints Row one, they've gone full social justice warrior out the arse when it comes to this. Everyone is hardcore shitting on this game. The development studio, the publishers and all, they're doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on all of this, on how they're not going to back down on all the social justice bullshit and all the safe space, politically correct crap that they're putting in and all the stuff that they're removing and changing and whatnot. They're essentially just saying to people, hey, all those other Saints Row games you loved? Yeah, this new one, this ain't for you. This is for these other people who complain and don't buy games. It's going to be rough. I don't play Saints Row myself. I hate to see this kind of thing happen. It's going to be sad for all those people who do play Saints Row, who have loved the last couple of games, and well, then get slapped down and just disgusted by this piece of shit. It's going to be a disaster. I hope it flops so they see that they need to stop pandering to all of these people and all of these groups who don't even buy or play the games. They just feign outrage, feign disgust, feign offense, feign whatever it is. But speaking of stuff that is offensively bad and all of that too, we're going to talk about MGS5, a game that is offensively bad in practically every single way. Now, specifically, we're going to talk about the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of MGS5. We're not going to be talking about the Xbox One stuff, the PS4 stuff, or the PC stuff. We're going to be talking about just the 360 and PS3 versions. Because, you may remember, there's an online multiplayer aspect for MGS5. It mainly involves base upgrading, forward operating bases, involving invading other bases and whatnot, getting resources, soldiers, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Now, it turns out the servers for this Metal Gear Online aspect are going to be turned off at 6 a.m. UTC on May 31st, 2022. Almost fitting and poetic a date, simply because I despise MGS5. I think it is absolute trash, absolute garbage, and unfortunately, it really shows how a series that has so many high quality entries near the start of it has completely nosedived, and well, let's just say, the series and Kojima have completely fallen off. And it's almost fitting and poetic that they're going to start turning off the servers for some of their platforms for the first time on my birthday. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to revel in that just that little bit more. It's going to be just that ever so much sweeter. Now, What they're doing, of course, is the in-game purchases and the ability to make the in-game base and currency and whatnot, the real-world purchases for this, have already been disabled. DLC purchases will be removed on November 38th, or sorry, November 38th, nice one, November 30th, 2021. And then, of course, we have the date for the full shutdown and all as well. Personally, I don't know how this is going to affect many people, especially on these platforms. Can't imagine there's anyone outside of a hardcore fan base of 6 people playing on these platforms, just trying to get to number 1 or trying to get their nuclear base or nuclear warhead achievement or whatever it is. But, I mean, move on. Deal with it. Almost sounds a bit weird coming from someone who's obsessed with retro games and, just has their entire channel and most of their existence on here based on retro games. Well, to be continued. But what's not to be continued anyway is we're going to talk Switch again. I know, big oof. We're talking the Switch price cut in this case. Now, we'll get into the details of it here, but this is kind of unexpected, almost, simply because it's, you know what I mean anyway. So the base model of the Nintendo Switch, not the Lite and not the OLED model, is going to have a price cut, or at this point already has a price cut, in the UK and Europe. Now, in the UK, it was originally £299, and now it's £259. By comparison, the OLED has launched right now at £309. Now, when it comes to the Eurozone, like the EU and whatnot, we have no set price in the Eurozone, simply because Nintendo were found guilty of illegal price fixing years and years and years and years ago, and because they have committed illegal business practices and were found guilty of said which, well, they're still not allowed to set their own RRP, or as you Americans and Canadians might know it as MSRP. You guys call it manufacturer's suggested retail price. Over here, it's recommended retail price. But they're not allowed to set them. If you could go check everywhere when the Switch was announced, not the PS5. When the Switch was announced, you could go to all the Nintendo Directs and all of this, and they would tell you, yes, it's going to be $300 in the US. It's going to be £299 in the UK. For European prices, check with your local retailer. All because they were found guilty of illegal price fixing and cannot set their own prices. It's fucking glorious and fantastic because they break the law. They get punished for it. Get fucking shreked, shithole company that does illegal stuff, and get sued and found guilty for it. Anyway, back to the point here. Let's use a quick example though, even though this is not their official ones. I'm using this from GameStop Ireland just as a quick example on here. So the base model Switch used to be €329. That's based on my personal one that I bought on day one, €329, is now €299. The OLED Switch model is going to launch or already has launched at €365. Now, they've said at the moment that there's no plans for a US or North American price cut, that it all just seems to be European stuff in the meantime. So, if you're holding out for one, don't even bother wasting your money and buying one, because it's still a Switch. Now, one of the big ones we're going to talk about here, one of the more spicy ones, because naturally it's a very big, important game and all here too, which is, yeah, a lot of people are, even though it's a meme within itself, we're still going to talk about it. So we're talking GTA 5. Yes, GTA 5. We are talking GTA 5. Crazy stuff when you think about it, that we're still 8 years, going on 9 years later, talking about GTA 5. We're talking about the current gen upgrade for Xbox Series S and PS5 and PC. Now, it has been delayed from late 2021 to March of 2022. I believe originally it was supposed to launch alongside the free standalone GTA Online side of it. And, you could get the free multiplayer and just go from there, and hopefully they would believe you would hopefully spend shark cards or money on shark cards, and now, well, some people would buy the single player story mode and all with the, what do we call it, the campaign and all, just with the upgrades and all separately. Now, that has been delayed, and and all that's important thing. Not sure if it will be paid or free at this point, because we know how it's been going with a lot of the games over the PS4 to PS5 and Xbox Series, or Xbox One to Xbox Series S crossovers, and especially as well because there's a PC version, which, well, they probably couldn't get away with, even on, well, not on PC at least anyway. But I expect it to be paid on console and free on PC, even if it is a small upgrade, like a €10 upgrade or something like that. I do expect it to be paid in some capacity. They're going through the trouble to remaster or redo or whatever it is, all these upgrades. It's GTA 5. They can get away with it, unfortunately. So I pretty much expect them to do so, simply because GTA 5 has sold over 150 million copies worldwide. It is the second best-selling game of all time. Next to Minecraft, it has sold more than any Nintendo franchise, any Nintendo game, any Nintendo series, platform, whatever, in history. And of course, all other ones as well. Any Sony one, any Microsoft one, any SEGA one. But I just want to really, really highlight, because the saltiness of the Switch fanboys, or rather just the Nintendo ones, they really get butthurt when you point out facts like that. But yeah, you got to do what you got to do anyway. Now, the kind of thing that disheartens me and breaks me down just a little bit when it comes to this is, just remember this, right? I mentioned at the start of this segment that we were still talking about GTA 3 8 going on 9 years later. Sadly, just remember that back on the PS2, we had three whole GTA games on the PS2, yet we have one GTA game for 3 generations of consoles. Now, I'm not including remasters or anything like that, but we have one for 3 generations of consoles. GTA 5 launched on the 360 and the PS3, then the PC, PS4, and Xbox One, and soon the PS5, Xbox Series mess, and I don't know if we count the PC in this one again, but you get the idea. All because you fucking people insist on giving them money over and over and over for fucking shark cards. You're literally paying them not to develop GTA 6. You should be fucking ashamed of yourself and embarrassed of yourself. You know what? I shouldn't even be saying that, simply because if you're watching this video, chances are you're logical, you're smart, you understand. But unfortunately, for the dozens, if not hundreds, or whoever it is, let's just say every single one of the subs, for the 1,000 plus people who could potentially see this video and this segment, there's still over 149,990 something thousand of you that don't get this message and could, in theory, be the brain damaged, smooth brains that spend the money on this kind of thing. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. But anyway, moving on, we got some stuff that may or may not be bullshit. We have to see how it goes. Currently, this is a rumor, but we're going to talk Marvel vs. Capcom 2. A much loved and highly sought after and highly acclaimed fighting game from a couple of generations back. Now, potentially there's, well, according to reports anyway, potentially there's talks of a remaster or a re-release for modern platforms with Marvel vs. Capcom 2. There's lots of big social media posts and social media calls and social media campaigns and stuff. Hell, there was even I think it was free Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or re-release Marvel vs. Capcom 2, whatever it was, sign at an AEW show recently, which was pretty cool. And that made it onto Botchamania as well from there. So it's a pretty big deal, I think it's safe to say, since this is not available in any way on modern platforms. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't even have backwards compatibility. If you do have, say, I believe I'm pretty sure I have an OG Xbox 180 copy of it, and that's not even backwards compatible. So there's a bit of a problem there. It will be definitely a messy thing to redo licenses and all for now, simply because of Marvel and the pricing for all of their characters and all of their licenses and their fees and whatnot. It was a whole other story 20 years ago versus what Marvel and their characters are now. Now it's significantly more expensive and can be definitely a problem. But we're going to stick with a little bit of the more modern stuff here, because we're going to go with Far Cry 6. Now, there's plenty to talk about when it comes to Far Cry 6, but practically all of them are inconsequential, because there's only one thing I want to talk about with all of this. It's a big testament to how underpowered these new shitty consoles are. Because people think they can get big heads about these new consoles. It's like, oh, it can do 60 FPS, yeah, 1080p. Oh, it can do 120 FPS, yeah, 1080p at low quality settings or whatever it is. It can do all these like dynamic 4K and temporal upscaling and all this. Just get out of here. I'm going to put you in your place just a little bit more with some facts here as well. Because Far Cry 6 does not have ray tracing in any form on any of the consoles. It doesn't have it on Xbox Series S, doesn't have it on PS5, doesn't have it on Xbox Series X. The only platform that is powerful enough to have ray tracing properly with a proper resolution, quality settings, and playable frame rate in Far Cry 6 is PC. Because only PC can handle it, and only PC has the hardware to do so. Think about that. Less than a year in, and practically every game is a broken promise of a compromised experience. It's all dynamic, it's all temporal, it's all fucking frame rates all over the place, or it's all performance modes, which are just technical failures. Because, I mean, if you have to choose, it's already a failure. But speaking of failures, we're going to talk about something that's, well, not really a failure, but it is a sad day in the industry, because we're going to talk game studio stuff. Now, the only people that are going to like this are fanboys, which we'll talk about in a bit, but Sony announced recently that they have bought and acquired Bluepoint Games. Now, this was accidentally leaked a few months ago on the Japanese Sony Twitter, or Japanese PlayStation Twitter, a few months back, when they bought, I just call it House Marquee. I don't know if it's House Marquee or whatever it is, but when they bought them, and the Japanese account accidentally posted the image for Bluepoint Games, and then it was quickly deleted, and then the proper one was posted. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they are the likes of Demon Souls on PS5, Shadow of the Colossus Remake on PS2. They did the MGS HD collection as well, and several others like Gravity Rush and all as well. Now, that's all well and good in some ways. I mean, development for as a development studio, Bluepoint Games are fantastic. They make the best remakes and the best remasters you can get out there. It's fantastic stuff. They do amazing work and have amazing technology. But here's why I'm against it. Simply because now it's always... let's look at it this way. You have these studios who could take on any contract from any company. First party, third party, whatever it is. Different publisher. It could be Microsoft, it could be Nintendo, it could be Sony, it could be Square Enix, it could be EA, it could be Take-Two, it could be whatever. It could be any company. Any company could come in and get them to work on any specific thing, any specific platform, any specific game. And that could lead to, a higher quality of practically any game you can think of. But now, because it's Sony first party stuff, or it's their Sony first party studio, now, if they do remakes and remasters, they're very, very limited in what they have access to. It's that simple. Now they basically only have Sony first-party stuff. So that is all definitely not good. I'm never in agreement with a development studio being bought by a manufacturer, with the only exception is that development studio is about to go out of business. It's a decent studio, it's about to go out of business, but it's saved by a company or by one of the manufacturers buying it. That's the only way I can get behind all of that. Now, the only thing I will say is I will forgive this should one thing happen. Now that Sony owned them, and now that the Sony Japan studio is gone, well, it's time for a PS5 and PC era full, from the ground up, in complete overhaul remake of Legend of Dragoon. I'll forgive it when we get that. But there's a little bit of a thing going against that at the moment, because the rumors out there and everything going around are saying that the next thing from Bluepoint Games is going to be their first original project, first original game. They have the technology, they have the quality and all of that stuff. They just need some other things to do with it. Writing, planning, story, etc. Coming up with the actual mechanics instead of just improving and preserving the ones that are there and transferring them over. So we'll have to wait and see, but I'm not too happy about that. But I do always like to just take a quick second to remind everyone about this whole situation, because remember this, everybody out there, all you fanboys, with Bluepoint Games, other studios like Insomniac, and especially because of Naughty Dog. When the fanboys out there try and shit on Microsoft for buying studios and developers and publishers and all, yeah, Sony's been doing it too, all these years, and they all add up. Especially because your beloved Naughty Dog were bought by Sony. They were a multi platform developer. They were not founded by Sony. They were not created by Sony. They were bought by Sony. So you can't shit on anyone if you know facts. Feels good, man. But let's take it just a second and look at a different way. We're going to talk Perfect Dark Reboot here. Now, the Perfect Dark Reboot was announced a little while back by Microsoft. Of course, they do own the rights to it now. And it's in development at Microsoft by the way of The Initiative, which is a new studio, or rather, a new-ish studio founded by Microsoft in order to work on this kind of thing. Now, there's talk of The Initiative having another, what they're calling quadruple A. Yeah, it's really stupid, quadruple. That's why I'm doing 4 fingers on each. Big quadruple A new project coming from The Initiative. I don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. But mainly, this is not the same as Perfect Dark. It's, a lot of people are conflating the two, but they are separate. Perfect Dark is its own separate thing. But it has been announced that they're now bringing in Crystal Dynamics to help with development. Now, how does this work? There's no details or anything with the game yet whatsoever. We don't even know if it's going to be a first-person shooter like the rest of the Perfect Dark games, but we don't know what Crystal Dynamics are coming in to do, what they're coming in to help with, what's going to change, you know, what's new to the genre, or not new to the genre, what's new to the reboot, what's new to the remake, all of that. But when you look at the last couple of things Crystal Dynamics have done, you're talking, yeah, you know the one, Marvel's Avengers, some of them Tomb Raider games. Not the best track record going at the moment. But speaking of stuff that does have a good track record, sometimes at least anyway, but that may be about to change, especially with what we talked about earlier. We're going to talk about the Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, the Definitive Edition GTA 3 / Vice City / San Andreas Definitive Editions that are coming soon. Now, these were always rumored for a long, long time, and now they're officially announced and all that. They are remastered for modern platforms, which means Xbox One, Xbox Series S, PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC. They're touting gameplay enhancements, control enhancements, control scheme updates, because if you tried to play some of the old ones, like the PS2 era ones, GTA 3 and all that, if you just try to play the vanilla ones, they are a nightmare to control. You really need like a mod or something on PC, and just don't even try playing them on consoles. It is super rough. So depending on what you read, they could be updated to GTA 4 or GTA 5 control styles, which is pretty good and makes it pretty much more playable in that way. Now they've got questionable graphics because of the art style and all as well, because remasters and whatnot, they can't just improve on what's there. They have to fuck it up in some way. It's got a whole new art style which looks like trash, to be honest, and it's very divisive for a lot of people. Now, strangely enough, it seems that these have an always online requirement on PC, on certain platforms at least anyway, might be others too, but on PC seems to be the main one. Because, just Rockstar / GTA things. They're basically, hey, we're Rockstar, it's GTA, we can do whatever the fuck we want. It's GTA, probably the biggest franchise in the entire world. So, yeah, it's play by our rules or get fucked. Now, the problem with this is they're basically full price. They're $60 on practically every, all last gen platforms and the super futuristic PC, and they're $70 listed on modern platforms, as in the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S, which is pretty bullshit. They're going to be releasing on November 11th, but that's November 11th this year, obviously 2021. But here's the crazy thing: we talked a little bit about Saints Row going all like social justice on it and all this as well. And as I mentioned, Rockstar was always the one that's kind of furthest away and always the biggest one to fly in the face of the establishment and say whatever they want without backlash and all of this stuff and without fear of it all, because they're Rockstars, like it's their thing. GTA, it's the GTA modus operandi. Well, it turns out some eagle-eyed viewers have pointed out that certain references to things like Confederate flags and whatnot have been removed from at least the trailer. We don't know if it's removed in the full game, but character models have been changed and Confederate flags have been removed from certain characters. in the trailer. Now, like I said, we don't know if it's in the game. Bad enough that it's being removed in the trailer. If it's removed in the game itself, while this doesn't affect me personally, and I'm not offended by it or anything like that, it just goes to show that even Rockstar and even GTA are still a little bit afraid and still a little bit, just a little bit, worried about hurting their sales or hurting their money in any way. That they, of all people, of all game series, would do this. That literally has me shocked. Boom, scene change. But, these things take a while. So, we're going to go on and we're going to go with the harrowing news that we are getting another Super Mario Brothers live action film. Yes, yes. I don't know if anything can top the Bob Hoskins slash John Leguizamo masterpiece we had back in the day, but they're certainly going to try. Now, currently this is penciled in for December 21st, 2022, and we have a little bit of a cast list on here too. There's not much to say about it other than that. Basically, other than the announcement, the release date, and the cast list, well, you can oof. Anyway, let's look at it real quick, shall we? We have, I can't believe I'm going to say this, we have Chris Pratt, aka terrible actor and unfunny guy, Chris Pratt, as Mario. And by the way, he has confirmed he will be doing Mario in his normal voice. Feels bad, man. We've also got Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black as Bowser, Keegan-Michael Key as Toad. That'd probably be pretty funny, because he's a funny guy. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong. Kevin Michael Richardson as Kamek. I can never pronounce this guy's name. Sebastian Maniscalco as Spike. And we also have stuff like, so now this is the bit that burns many people. Burns many people, myself included. Surprise cameos from Charles Martinet. Now, voice of Mario. Surprise cameos. If you're not sure who Charles Martinet is, he's been literally the voice of Mario for over 2 decades. You know that, woohoo, it's a me, Mario, you know and love? That's him. And he's not voicing Mario. He's going to be a surprise cameo in some ways. It's rough. Hopefully it tanks. Hopefully it burns. I know practically no one in this entire cast outside of Chris Pratt, Keegan-Michael Key, and Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen hasn't been funny in a long time. Keegan-Michael Key, I barely know. I know him from like some skits and memes and stuff, and they're pretty funny. And Chris Pratt sucks. That's just all it is. Hopefully this burns in hell. But anyway, we're going to move on to something that has a film tie-in, but we're not going to talk about the film at all. We're going to talk Uncharted. Specifically, we're talking Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. Nothing to do with the upcoming awful-looking film. Oh my god, that film looks so bad. But anyway, let's move away from that. This collection, the Legacy of Thieves Collection, is Uncharted 4 and Uncharted The Lost Legacy. Because, there's already the Nathan Drake collection, but I guess it kind of ties into this just a little bit, but maybe not. So, this Legacy of Thieves collection with these 2 games in it is remastered for the PS5. And listen to it. Most importantly, it's also remastered and being ported to PC. PC. Uncharted, that is 2, in this episode alone, 2 major tentpole franchises from Sony, previously exclusive, now coming to PC. We're not talking Horizon Zero Dawn second tier level stuff. We're not talking Days Gone second tier level stuff. No. We're talking God of War, top of the top of the top. And we're talking Uncharted, top of the top of the top. God of War's been around since the PS2. Uncharted's been around since the PS3. Next up, Last of Us, Spider-Man. It's their only true 2 top tier tentpole franchises. I'm going to say French pole franchises. Tentpole franchises. There we go. Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. Just give me The Last of Us on PC. I'll be happy. That way, I mean, I can play it on my PS5 now, but whatever. It just makes it so much easier. And yes, it's almost certainly, I'm 99.9% sure this will not be a free upgrade, because we all know that Sony have already said that their free upgrade process is going to be cancelled, and they'll all cost from now on. But the fact that this is two separate games being remastered in a collection, not just a cross-generational upgrade at the time, or cross-generational optional choice at the time, I am 99.9% sure this is going to not be just at a $10 paid upgrade. It's going to be a full purchase, or close price full purchase. Sony used to charge 40 to 45 euro for their remasters from PS3 to PS4 a lot of the time. So chances are this one will be, because of the price increase, 50 to 55, maybe even 60. We'll go 50 to 60 just for the sake of it. And of course, it's not going to be a free upgrade on PC, because it's brand new on there. Now, it's early 2022 for the PS5, which ties in with the approximate release date of the new awful-looking Uncharted film, and it's going to be shortly after on PC. So they said it will also be early 2022 on PC. It will just be shortly after the PS5 version. Now, it's not all, sunshine, lollipops, and roses at the moment, because the PC port is being developed by Iron Galaxy. So it could go either way, and chances are it's going the negative way. If you don't know who Iron Galaxy are, you haven't been paying attention, because Iron Galaxy are the development studio behind the PC port of Batman Arkham Knight. Oof. But, I'll possibly buy it. I don't know about this. There's a big difference between a lot of the Sony stuff, because I'm apathetic towards most of it, and I just don't care about a lot of it. But Uncharted, I have tried. I tried on the PS4 with the Nathan Drake collection. When Uncharted was coming out on the PS3 first, I looked at it and thought, this just looks like male Tomb Raider. It doesn't really interest me too much, because at that point I'd been out of Tomb Raider as it was. And, I'm not going to just buy the thing just because it's not Lara Croft. So it didn't look any good, but I eventually got around to playing the first two games in the Uncharted, or the Nathan Drake collection, on the PS4. I liked the first one. I enjoyed it. Everyone always said that was the worst one, but I enjoyed it. The second one was good up until, it was decent. It was adequate. It was the same as the first one for about maybe 3/4 of the game or so. And then the last, maybe quarter of the game was just so bad, it turned me off the series truly, completely. Never even went on to play and finish the third. Not even finished, but I never even tried to play the third one, because the second one was so bad towards the end of it. And I'm assuming 4 and probably Lost Legacy would be more of the same. So I don't know if I'm going to buy this one. I've been kind of the same with God of War. I played the first one back in the day. I didn't like it. I realized this new one is very, very different. So, I have bought God of War. I've pre-ordered God of War on Steam. But my view and my outlook on it is changed a little bit, simply because when you look at Uncharted 4, it's the same as Uncharted 1, just a bit more. When you look at, when I look at least anyway, because I'm playing from the outside, when I look at God of War 2018, a game I'm not particularly interested in, that's why I skipped it on PS4, compare it to God of War on the PS2, very different kind of game. So it could go either way. But I will say, God of War 2018 does feel like the Sony template, which is, the generic third-person, over-the-shoulder action game. But who knows? It could be good. I'm going to be playing it in the best possible form, because, I'll be playing on PC, not PS4 or PS5. So, but I suppose Horizon Zero Dawn taught me one thing. That even better graphics, better resolution, better performance, better everything cannot save a bad game. Or a mediocre game. Or, no, we'll go with a bad game. Horizon was like a 2 out of 10. It wasn't great. 2 out of 10, what score did I give it? I don't remember. It's kind of, it doesn't matter. It's about the same level of quality and port you'd get from Iron Galaxy. So, says it all, really. Anyway, speaking of going back to films and sticking with them, this time we are going to properly talk about this one. We're going to talk about the Resident Evil film now. This one is yes, there is a new Resident Evil film. It is the reboot version. It's called Welcome to Raccoon City. And this has a release date at long last. And it's actually basically just around the corner, because this one is going to be releasing on December 3rd. Now, that's here in Ireland, at least anyway. It probably varies a little bit around the world, maybe by a couple of days or a week or so. But the thing that makes this one especially strange is I haven't been keeping too close an eye on it, because I expect it to be kind of garbage and whatnot, and I'll eventually just see it. That's it. I'm not super hyped about it, especially because of how the Resident Evil film has gone, or Resident Evil film history series, whatever you want to call it, has gone. So, in this one, naturally, to promote it in the run up to do so, they've put out several different trailers. And here's the thing that's strange: like the main trailer they put out, this one is, I believe it's like the US or the North American trailer, or like the primary trailer that they put out anyway, which was extremely bad and it looked awful. Now, that's kind of no surprise given, Sony. What Sony do, a lot of Sony films, believe it or not, are absolute shite. Many people forget that. It's basically just their gaming division that's keeping them afloat at the moment because their films are shite. Haha, looking at you, Venom. And there's just so much else that just does not work. And this is a great example of that. But they also released another trailer roughly at the same time. And it's like the international trailer, as they call it. So it's for like other markets and stuff like that. And it's essentially a different trailer. And it's a bit better. It's not great. It's not really good. It's just better. It's more promising. It looks, if you look at the original trailer, the one they put out that was very poorly received. If you look at that, you could see that as like, okay, this film looks shit. But if you look at this other one, and without seeing the first one, you're like, okay, this could be decent. This could be okay. This is like 50-50. So it has potential. That's the main thing. I just find it weird, but some things that don't help it as well is the setting of the film. If you know anything about Resident Evil lore, Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 did not take place at the same time. They took place time apart. But this new one is going to be taking place over the course of one night with Resident Evil, the story from Resident Evil 1 and the bits that have been imported from Resident Evil 1 taking place at the same time in the city as Resident Evil 2. So it kind of combines both of them at the same time. But, that's not great. And the track record for Resident Evil films is all over the place. A lot of them are just kind of cheesy bad. I do enjoy the first one. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure. But overall, the Resident Evil films are just kind of cheesy bad, especially the early ones. Some of the later ones are just generic and kind of like generic bad. They're not truly bad. They're just generic subpar. But, they've got lots of hot girls in them. And, that girl that plays Ada Wong, oh my God. Just, oh my God. But anyway, back to the point here. We'll see how this goes. The only thing I can say, other than this second international trailer, the only thing I can say with this one is that it's a little bit promising, is it doesn't have Paul Worthless Shit Anderson involved. So, that sounds pretty good to me. But you know what doesn't sound pretty good to me? Or rather, you know what does sound pretty good to me? You know what? Let's go with both. What doesn't sound good to me is the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass. What does sound good to me is the ability to shit on the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass because it is so, so bad. So this was obviously announced a little while back. We're going to cover the initial announcement details and all, and then we're going to progress through it as we go. Because like I said, this info was partially out of date, but you get the idea. So what is the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack? Oh yeah, pack, not expansion pass. Forgot about that. So used to saying stuff like that. Season pass, expansion pass, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's an additional service for their shitty online subscription. It is now $50 a year instead of $20 if you're going for the expansion pack version rather than just the base version. So you're paying an extra $30 a year, and here's what you're paying the extra $30 for. 9 N64 games and 14 Mega Drive games. Naturally, they will be adding more to the subscription service, which will completely be drip fed, rarely, of course, as is their service with like the NES, the SNES, or even any of the virtual console stuff back in the day. There was a bit of a concern at first about the N64 games running, here in Europe at least anyway, running at 50 hertz, but they have confirmed that the N64 games do run at 60 hertz, and some of which even have the option to play the 50 hertz PAL releases too, if you've got some type of death wish or some type of masochism that you love for just some real weird reason. I don't care if it's the version you grew up on. No. I did that recently with Sonic the Hedgehog, but you get the idea. So it also includes limited time access to the new Animal Crossing paid DLC, that one that's usually $25. I say it's limited access because it is the full DLC, but if you stop paying for this subscription, which you absolutely should. Actually, no, you should not stop paying for it because you should not even sub to it in the first place. So you get the idea. But it removes access to it and all as well. So if you do stop subscribing to it, because it's like Netflix, it's like all these other things. When you stop paying in perpetuity, well, you've got nothing to show for it. So always buy physical media and always buy something tangible out of it. Even if it's just a digital download file, that still works, but it's better than this kind of crap. Anyway, where were we? So, yes. So, like I said, you lose access to, and you would have to either resubscribe or rebuy the DLC for $25. Now, they also have the improved joypads and all as well for both the N64 and the Mega Drive, just like they did with the NES and SNES. So if you are subscribed to the Nintendo Switch Online, you are given the option, the privilege of having to be able to purchase these if you want. They're really, really trying it on the N64 at least anyway, because there's no button remapping. We'll get to that in a second. And trying to play them on any other type of controller just does not work. So they're really, really trying to push that N64 pad. The Mega Drive one, not so much. It's not really much of a big deal. I mean, it's essentially just 3 buttons, which we'll talk about now in a second. The N64 has built-in rumble in there as well. But of course, there's no rumble on the Sega Mega Drive one, obviously, because there never was. Interestingly enough, if you live in Europe or the North American region, the Mega Drive controller, or Genesis controller, if you want to be incorrect about it, they give you the 3-button one. But if you are in Japan, they give you the 6-button one. Now, that's likely to do with something, either the games that are included, I haven't checked the Japanese list, or else the games planned in the future for specifically the Japanese list and not the regular one. But here's where it gets a little bit better, and this is why we want to shit on this. Not only is this awful value and terrible value and all as well, you have idiot fanboys out there, specifically YouTubers with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, who are Nintendrones. They're Nintendo fanboys, and they are coping extra hard with this. They say things like, you get all this for free. You don't even get the NES and SNES stuff for free because you're paying $20 a year for it. You don't get all this extra stuff for free because you're paying another $30 on top of it for that. And then they're trying to say as well that, well, it really only costs you $5 extra because you get the $25 Animal Crossing DLC included with it. But here's the big question. What if you don't want that? What if you don't play Animal Crossing? Or what if you just bought it or whatever? But either way, it's cope. It's hardcore cope. And it gets better. It gets better. They also tried to say that one of the reasons... No, let me reword that. They also tried to say that the expansion pass, or the N64 games, I should say, are free because you're with the extra $30, you're paying $25 for the DLC and $5 for the Sega Mega Drive licensing. So the Nintendo 64 games are free. That is the hardcorest fanboy cope I've ever heard of. But wait, there's more. Yeah, it gets good. If you've been paying attention, this Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack has released just a few days ago. And it may be no surprise to you that the emulation on N64 games is pure dumpster fire, Nintendo grade trash. That's right. No surprise at all that it is Nintendo grade trash. There have been comparisons. Stuff runs like shit. Stuff looks like shit. Graphical glitches galore. Games frequently crashing. No button remap. And in some games, Zelda specifically, when it does crash, it has been deleting people's saves. There's visual glitches, visual artifacts, just emulation problems that don't render things properly. And here's the best part of it. It gets so good. If you've been paying attention to emulation and different versions of games and all over the years, the native Wii U version of the Virtual Console release of Zelda Ocarina of Time is widely considered to be the worst version of the game. Significantly worse than the original and worst version of the game. If you compare it to the Switch Online version, the Switch Online version is even worse. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that all these games have massive input lag? Yeah, imagine that. Especially with stuff like, imagine F-Zero on there. Imagine any other type of fast racing game, or just any game that involves any type of live action control, including Zelda, Super Mario 64, literally any game that's not turn based, which is almost every game. Absolute joke of a service. It is terrible. I just think it's so funny and very, very, very Nintendo that they're not even doing the bare minimum. They're doing below the bare minimum. The stuff doesn't even work properly. It's so funny. But hey, Nintendrone's going to Nintendrone. Meanwhile, this guy don't pay for shit when it comes to Nintendo Online services because it's a load of bollocks. But you know what I will pay for? Monster Hunter Rise, because the PC version, which we all knew was coming, the PC version now has a release date. January 12th, 2022. So it is coming very early next year. We've got some of the details on the upgrades and all included with it, including 4K textures, 4K assets, 4K quality, 4K resolution support, and it's got better quality everything. Real frame rate, of course, none of this 30 FPS and below shit that you have on the Switch. It's got voice chat because, Nintendo. Am I right? It's even got stuff like proper ultra-wide support as well. Now, there's a demo already on PC. I have tried the demo very, very briefly. I didn't want to sit down and put like an hour or 2 hours into it because I know I'm already going to buy the game and why just redo the whole thing. But, there is a bit of a problem. The fact that the game has a base floor of the Nintendo Switch, it just doesn't look great even on PC when you turn everything up to max. I'm playing at 4K 60 here until I get my new monitor, which, god damn it, Asus, hurry up and announce it and release it already. But yeah, I'm playing at 4K 60 here, and even with everything maxed out, you can still tell it's just a PC version of a game that has to run on Switch. So it's rough. They also have announced an expansion pack, not a shitty expansion pack like the Nintendo Switch Online one, but a proper expansion pack as well with this. It's going to be called Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, which launches both on Steam and Switch simultaneously at some point in the summer of 2022. Now, they've also ruled out cross-play and cross-save for Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak. I don't know why. They just said whatever way it's been implemented or whatever way the code and the game has been programmed and implemented and whatnot, that they just can't do it. I have a funny feeling it's a Nintendo-specific mandate, and they're saying, no, we don't want it, because that's very Nintendo. But hey, I don't care. I don't care how many things it sells on Nintendo. I don't care how the time exclusive it comes out on Nintendo. I can wait for Monster Hunter Rise, and I can play the best version of it. That's all that matters to me. I don't care if it sells more on Switch. I don't have to play your shitty, broke-ass version. And I have a Switch right over there, as we all know. But I just got quality standards, unlike all these other people. Now, we are going to give a little bit of an up. Don't worry, guys, we're almost finished. It's been a trip. We're almost there. We're going to talk about a little bit of PSN updates because some weird stuff is happening. And it's kind of understandable, but some weird stuff is happening and some restrictions are coming in. So it's going to make it a little bit harder, a little bit more difficult and more convoluted for any of you retro gamers out there who are trying to pick up some older games on older platforms. So digital purchases on certain platforms are going to be changed when it comes to the PSN. It's more so specifically about how you add currency and credit and all to it and then buy them on said platform. Specifically, this is going to apply to the PSP, PS3 and PS Vita stores because they've had a pretty turbulent year. So with this one, it's about to get even messier. Sony, you might remember, did a backtrack to keep these stores open, up and purchasable when they kind of, what was it, last year or earlier this year? I don't remember. It's all a blur, the whole last 2 years with COVID and all. But it's all messy. And they didn't backtrack entirely on this. There's still some extra dates. There's still some extra restrictions coming in and all of that as well. So what's happening this time? The ability to use credit and debit cards and PayPal options will be removed from the Vita and the PS3. You might remember the PSP store is already gone years and years ago. So the ability to buy games directly or add money to your wallet or anything using credit cards, debit cards, or PayPal will be removed from the PS3 and PS Vita stores. Now, that's going to happen when I wrote these notes. It was later this month on October 27th, 2021. So, as of a few days ago. Enjoy. Yes, these you may have noticed at some point, but some of these segments it's such a long thing. They're filmed in different times, different days. But, we're getting there, guys. Don't worry. So yeah, that's as of gone as of the time of this. So whoops, if you're waiting on me for that news. Now, if you want to buy digital content on the PS3 or Vita, you need to add funds to your PlayStation account and PlayStation wallet. Now, to do this, you can use either a PSN gift card, a credit card, a debit card, or PayPal, or whatever other options are available on whatever platform, using either the PC, mobile, PS4, or PS5. So essentially, if you want to buy something on the PS3 or the Vita, you need to go on to either the PlayStation website, the PlayStation app, the PS4, the PS5, add the money to your account and your wallet, then go back onto said platform and buy said content. So it's still there. It's a little bit more convoluted. It's a little bit more awkward to do, but you still can do it. But I will just say this: get in if you want any of them retro gaming purchases, your PS1 classics, your PS2 classics, your PSP classics, your Vita games, whatever it is, get them all in as soon as possible. Preferably during a sale, because you never know when this stuff could just be all over the place, just a complete absolute mess. Speaking of a mess and a complete absolute mess, we're going to talk about a series that had a great game at the start and completely fell off in multiple different times and ways, and has never properly recovered, and probably won't with this next one. We're going to talk Dragon Age 4. Yes, that's right. You have me talking about Dragon Age 4. Probably because I love Dragon Age Origins, the first one. And I never got around to the DLC, even though I have it. But anyway, even if the series is a big mess and only has one good game, they're sadly still making them. Now, the thing about this is, if you haven't played it, Dragon Age 1 is an old school BioWare game. If you haven't, or if you have played it, I should say, you should know that it's a very old school, proper PC tier game. Because the game was now I'm not talking, a PC quality game, not a PC as in, politically correct modern game. No. Fuck that shit. Because back when EA were buying BioWare, Dragon Age was like 98% finished, so they didn't have time to step in and fuck everything up. But Dragon Age 2, they just walked in and say, make it more like Mass Effect. And, well, it turned out to be a hack and slash that just completely... Not only was it a hack and slash that completely just shit in the face of the whole thing, but it was a bad hack and slash. It was an exceptionally bad one. It was awful. But I also hear that Dragon Age Inquisition is a bit better, which isn't saying much, because it's faint praise being hailed as better than Dragon Age 2, So it's... We'll see. But since Dragon Age 4 has been officially announced, even though it is a few years... Well, it was announced technically, it feels like a few years ago. It's... a few years off at this point, possibly. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's a supposed inside report, anyway, that claims it's going to be current gen only, which means PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series mess. You know what I say to that? Good. Cut off the old generation as soon as possible. Factor it all out and only stick with modern stuff. Factor in only proper quality everything. You got SSDs, we've got Ryzen CPUs. I mean... the GPUs in these consoles aren't anything. They're not really even feeling anything modern. But get rid of all that other stuff, especially because games like this, Dragon Age is probably a few years off. Do you want a game that you're buying on your fancy new shiny current gen console in 2025 to also be releasing and hamstrung by stuff that released in 2013 that was low end, out of date 2011 hardware? No. Cut off all this stuff as possible. Get rid of it all. What we want is just forget the old underpowered crap and just eat. Well, let me try it again. Just develop for the new slightly underpowered crap and get rid of the completely old, out of date, all shit in there. It stifles quality, it stifles design, and it stifles creativity. So let's get into the modern era, the future. The future, which is so bright, at least on PC, because this console hardware is still dirt. We gotta wear shades. It's from all the rays that are ray traced out of us at proper quality, frame rate, and native resolution with quality settings and all too. So since we are back with our big podcast, which we're back to on the regular now and all as well, we'll be keeping up with the news, all that good stuff. Instead of It's been like 3 months since I've done one of these. So instead of having a queue, what's going on, what's up, what's the deal, what's going down, what are you playing, what's the 411? Well, there's been so many games in there, which you should check out on the Twitch channel. We do a lot of the retro stuff on there. But of course, I've been playing games offline myself and all too. But it's just such a convoluted one at the moment that we haven't got around to. I'm not going to bother with something like that. What I am going to do is a little bit different in there. I'm going to do a one that's been, over a month, maybe 2 months in the making at this point, and it's going to be PS5 and my experience so far, because we've got all types of stuff to talk about when it comes to this. Now, I've played 4 games on the PS5 at the moment, four proper native PS5 games. That is, I've played stuff like, unfortunately, I've played The Last of Us Part 2 with the 60 FPS patch. Still awful. Doesn't improve anything except the frame rate, so it does make the gameplay slightly more playable, even if the game itself is shite in practically every way. But that's beside the point. So, I bought my PS5. You may remember I had an Xbox Series X and a PS5 pre-ordered way back in the day, but I realized there was no games or anything out on them, so I cancelled them before launch in September of last year, 2020. Now, eventually, I just decided, you know what? I'm bored. I'll buy one. It's available. Blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. So I got my PS5. Now, I have a couple of games on here. I have Demon Souls, I have Spider-Man remastered, and Spider-Man Miles Morales. And I've also got Astro's Playroom, because that included with it. Maybe I'll go play some Astro's Playroom after this. For the lulz. Streamed a little bit of it the other day, but you get the idea. Now, so there's a lot to talk about because I know PC hardware. I'm top end PC hardware. I'm a hardware guy. I've played pretty much every console you can think of, or at least the majority of them. All the mainstream stuff. I own them all. But there's lots of things to talk about, right? Because there's so much information and misinformation, and everything's been passed around out there as well. Of course, it's almost all on the console guys and the console websites and all, because they're speaking from their own relative place, which is last place, which is being behind, which is being several years behind. So you have to take all this into consideration. Like, for example, they had talked all this mad stuff in the year and a half run up to the PS5, or 2.5 years if you want to include up until, well, I finally got one. They talked all this good stuff about, how great the PS5 was, how the SSD is game changing when it comes to practically everything. And I'm thinking, okay, hang on. I don't believe any of this because I know all about SSDs. I know about SSD speed. I know about CPU check-ins. I know about I/O and all of this crap that they're on about. And I'm thinking, like, everything they say makes little to no sense. They're just overhyping what it does. Yes, it's going to bring massive improvements, but like they're saying it's some sort of magic. So I turn on my PS5 anyway. My PS5 takes longer to turn on than my PC. Now, keep in mind, as magic as they say the PS5 SSD is, my PC is still, the SSDs in my PC are 27% faster at 7000 Mbps. In fact, my SSDs are so good that I bought these last year in 2020. And when the PS5 beta firmware came out and then the full official firmware came out that enabled the external expanded storage support? Mark Cerny, the PlayStation engineer that everybody loves like some type of weird god? Yeah, he went and publicly said he was buying the same SSD that I have 2 of for nearly a year. I know what I'm doing. I know what to expect. I know all of this stuff. So, anyway, back to the SSD. Yes, the SSD does naturally improve performance. It does completely overhaul so many things in that way, but it's not game-changing. It does help with game design, as long as they factor out all the old shit too, but it's not this magic bullet that they all say it is. There's still loading screens, there's still loading times. It's not as fast as they say, it's just significantly faster. Now, I realize, as mentioned, it may seem like something magic for you console plebs out there. But here in the glorious PC Gaming Master Race, we've been doing this kind of thing for a decade. And now we're still doing it better. And hell, PCIe 5.0 is just around the corner. And that just completely annihilates everything. But you know what? Having said all that, I am thankful that these consoles now have SSDs in them. And they're factoring out, at least in the process of it, and current gen only games are factoring it out anyway. They're getting rid of all of the hard drive expectations, which is good. which is absolutely good. It is great. It is nice to see progress in that way. I mean, they could have easily stuck on something basic like I don't know, a SATA 3, 6 gigabyte SSD or something like that, a 6 gigabit per second SATA 3 SSD, something like that. But they went with NVMe. Xbox technically is 3.0. PlayStation is bottom barrel 4.0. But the point is, they went with it. It's still there. It's probably hell. It's the only slightly modern thing about the systems. But we'll talk about that in a second because we're going to talk graphics now. Like I said, I have 4 games that I've played on here. I'm only including the native PS5 version games. I technically have Final Fantasy VII Remake PS5 edition installed, but I'm not going to play it because I have to choose between 2 compromised modes: 4K 30 or dynamic less than 4K 60. Completely compromised, not playing it, just waiting on the PC version. So, like I said, we're going to talk Spider-Man Remastered, which, by the way, I've played a significant amount of time in. I've played all the DLCs, which are done 100%, and I have platinumed the base game. I didn't do New Game Plus, but you get the idea. Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I finished the game. I did 100% completion, but I did not get the platinum because that involves going around and doing a bunch of extra stuff, a bunch of extra crap stuff, as well as New Game Plus, which I'm not doing. Astro's Playroom, which I played for a few hours, one time on stream. And then I have Demon's Souls, which I played, I don't know, 4, 6, 8 hours, something like that. Less than 10 hours. I played it like 3 times. Streamed it once for a few hours. Played it offline myself twice for maybe 2 hours a pop. Beat the Phalanx boss, so I'm a little bit past that. But yeah, so anyway, let's talk about it. Graphics. What are we talking about? Now, 2 of these I feel like I can only give proper criticism of, or proper aspect of, because let's face it, at the end of the day, Spider-Man Remastered is originally a PS4 game, and it was remastered PS5. Of course, it looks better on the PS5, but still, Spider-Man Miles Morales is a cross-generational game, so it is technically a PS4 game. It is the improved PS5 version, but Astro's Playroom and Demon's Souls are both the full, proper, current-gen only games. So Astro's Playroom, I'm only going to talk about for a split second. It's what you would expect. It's because of the art style and what the game is. It's not going for a visual powerhouse. It's got all the slight nuance and the slight improvements that you would expect of, say, if you released Astro's Playroom on the PS4 and then looked at that and then compared it to a native PS5 game, not like a not a native PS5 version of the same game, but a native PS5, let's say the sequel, for example, you can see all the slight minor improvements. It's because of the type of game and the style it is. But then we look at Demon's Souls, okay? Everyone talked all this mad stuff about Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls looks good. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't look great. You know why? Because, again, I'm saying the same thing. You console guys, you're speaking from relative terms. Your last place, you're comparing to 2013 hardware. Congratulations. Now Demon's Souls looks like a game from maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Congratulations. Don't get me wrong, it's still a big improvement over the absolute awful, possibly worst generation in console history. Xbox One and PS4 generation. It is still a big improvement over there, and it does show. And it has the benefits as well of only working with the SSD, having being, sure, they backtracked on their ray tracing promise because the consoles are underpowered. So you either get 4K 30 with no ray tracing or 1440p 60 with no ray tracing. So you get the idea. There's still improvements there. There's still base level improvements, but it's not what the fanboys will have you believe. Like I said, congratulations, you look like a 3 or 4 year old game. But, I mean, by comparison, they were still playing, up until the end of 2020, they were playing on 7-year-old hardware with games that looked 10 years old. So, yeah, I guess it's enjoyable in that way. But, I mean, even when you look at some other games, let's take a brief talk about Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man, the graphics in Spider-Man, even the remastered version, I have a brand new LG CX OLED. This has been properly configured. I've set it up. Everything's updated. But I know they're remastered versions of games, and I look at them and I just think, okay, this looks like what a PC game could have looked like 4 or 5 years ago, if they only developed for that level of hardware. And not say like a 970 or a 660 or some shit, but you know, they have to factor in all the old gen hardware and all as well. That's one of the reasons, the primary reasons I want all that stuff cut out and got rid of completely. But you know, Spider-Man, it looks decent. Now, one thing I will say, Spider-Man Remastered played better than Spider-Man Miles Morales. Spider-Man Miles Morales, it didn't necessarily have a massive amount of extra stuff. There's a little bit of physics here and there as well, but those situations were extremely rare. You know, there was like 4 of them in the entire game. But the overall graphics and performance in Miles Morales I actually found to be lower. There was far more pop-in, far more noticeable shadow cascading and all as well, just as it goes with you, because there's the draw distance for the shadows is only a certain distance. So as you be swinging, you would just see it appearing with you in the same distance. It wasn't as bad with Spider-Man Remastered. There was almost none of it in that. But Spider-Man Miles Morales was much worse on the graphical and performance front of it as well. So no big benefits and bonuses there. And of course, yes, I bought the native PS5 versions. So I made sure I was playing the PS5 versions. Because it didn't actually give me access to the PS4 versions, which is funny. But you get the idea. And that also comes back with the likes of stuff like performance as well. There was a couple of hiccups in Miles Morales. Spider-Man Remastered was pretty much perfect. Demon's Souls was pretty much perfect when it came to that. But the big question is, like, look at all these trade-offs. You talk about Spider-Man. There's several different modes. There's 3 different modes in Spider-Man, or was it 4? I can't remember. There's at least 3 of them, so we'll work on the assumption there's 3 of them. There's 4K 30. Oh, sorry, dynamic 4K 30 with ray tracing. There's dynamic resolution with 60 FPS with no ray tracing, and it's obviously much lower quality assets and all too. Or there's the ray tracing mode. Now I haven't tried, ray tracing performance mode. I haven't tried the 4K or 4K 30 ray tracing mode. I also haven't tried the ray tracing performance mode because it's significantly lower resolution. It's significantly lower everything in quality. They even tell you that there's like population density and all as well. And I've seen screenshots, I've seen clips, I've seen videos, I've seen reports and all. This city is almost completely bare of population because of ray tracing. Not to mention, ray tracing on these consoles is very, very low resolution. It is nice they can do them, I guess, you know, relative to their old hardware. But pop over and use Doom Eternal as an example. If you use the 60 FPS ray tracing mode in Doom Eternal on console, the game is running at 60 FPS. Ray tracing is running at what seems like 15 FPS. A lot of them use like 1/4. So that's why it makes sense. So it doesn't match. It's also extremely low quality because the consoles just can't handle it. Spider-Man is a great example of that too. Demon's Souls was promised originally with ray tracing. Can't do it. At either 4K 30 or 1440p 60. It can't do it. So Spider-Man and Miles Morales, that's why they have issues. And this is across the board. This is all the other games as well. Every time you see a game, it's a choice of modes. It's performance, it's not performance. It's like maybe ray tracing at 30 or performance at 60. This is a failure. This just shows how underpowered and out of date your consoles are. So, yeah, I don't have to choose any of that. Far Cry 6 doesn't even have ray tracing at all as an option on console because it doesn't have, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have these modes. It's only aiming for up to dynamic 4K 60. As far as I'm aware, I haven't checked the console stuff on that with it. I have it on PC because I got it for free, but I haven't played it. But the point is, it's all these choices, all these compromises because they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. Now, I'll talk briefly about games real quick. We don't have much to talk about because, like I said, I've only really properly played 4 games on there. Astro's Playroom, I'm going to completely skip over because it was just a, play it once for 5 minutes kind of thing. Just to meme on stream. That was it. Demon's Souls, I don't really have too much of an opinion on. I played it for a little bit. The only reason I bought Demon's Souls was because when I buy a piece of hardware, I will buy a game with it. And I'm not going to buy a console just by itself. I need something to play on it. Out of the one or two exclusive games, I mean, this is probably going to lose exclusivity within the next few weeks because it's coming up on the 1 year mark. And we all know there was the leak about it before, when it was announced. Yeah, you can try play it off all you want, but it's still probably coming. I mean, hell, every other fucking Sony game is. But I just when I played it, this was the exclusive that I didn't care about the least, if that makes sense. Because I don't care about Ratchet and Clank. I actively avoid Ratchet and Clank because I don't like it. And then you've got stuff like this. So this was the one I didn't care about the least, if that makes sense. So I can't say I cared about it most because I just don't care about it. So I tried that anyway. Demon Souls was more fun than I played. See, I played a bunch of Dark Souls 3. I say a bunch, I streamed it a few times, but that was about it. And I didn't really enjoy it. It was okay, but I will say that Demon Souls definitely felt better to play. I don't know if that was partially just because of all the nuances afforded to it by proper hardware and only being on current gen and not being developed for all this old shit. Like I said, those Xbox One and PlayStation 4s, they just stifled creativity and the industry by about a decade. In general, it was horrible, horrible. So this really felt new in that way, and maybe it was all the slight current gen improvements that helped it, or maybe it's just because Bluepoint Games remastered or remade the game exceptionally well, like Bluepoint Games are known to do. Spider-Man, again, Spider-Man was one of those things that I didn't really care about. I completely skipped it on PS4. I completely skipped it. Not going to say on PS5. I completely skipped Miles Morales as well because I had no interest in the games whatsoever. I only bought it one day because I was walking around Dublin bored and I saw it on sale for €55 for the Ultimate Edition. So I said, fuck it, I'll buy it. And it took me weeks to even start it. And I played through the entire thing, like I said, with Spider-Man Remastered. I completed all three of the DLCs 100% and I platinumed the base game. But having said that, I mean, I feel like it was almost like Days Gone when I was playing it, in the sense that I was never really properly having fun. I was just on, I won't say autopilot. I was on like mediocre autopilot, mediocre playing. It was fun enough for me to do all that and complete the game and play it so much. But I wasn't very actively aware that I was having fun or anything like that in it. So, I mean, it's not bad. Both of them in that. Miles Morales is obviously not as good, but it just, yeah, wasn't bad. Wasn't great. Just kind of average. I will say this though, I didn't enjoy the traversal because it could be kind of annoying sometimes with all the swinging, and the controls were really bad, by the way, in both Spider-Man games. A lot of the swinging controls, the building controls, like when you're going up buildings and trying to move around and stuff, the traversal controls were awful in there, and a lot of the traversal was just tedious and pedestrian to me. But I will say I really enjoyed going around and collecting everything in the city, so that was fun. All the different stuff in, say, Miles Morales, you find the postcards, you find the sound samples, you find the underground caches, and then you've got stuff in Spider-Man that are a little bit varied as well. There's the cat, not Catwoman, the Black Cat stuff, where you go around and you have to look through the camera to find the thing she's robbing, all stuff like that. I mean, all the slight different variances on them. And there were so many of them that the landmarks too. The landmarks were cool. So there was pretty good stuff in that. That was more fun than pretty much the entire game. I've never really been a huge Spider-Man guy, so I mean, I guess that's probably why. But yeah, the only thing left to talk about after that is the DualSense, and I find that everyone's going to hate this because I found that the DualSense is possibly the most overrated input device I've ever heard of, because they talk about, as the character walks with his left foot, the left side of it shakes. He walks with the right side of it, the right side of it shakes with his right foot, and all of this, and various different levels and all of this crap. And I will be completely honest with you. Outside of the very, very, very first time I turned on Astro's Playroom. Now, I played Demon Souls before I played Astro's Playroom. So just to give you an idea, I had proper PS5 experience with it. Outside of the very first time you turn on Astro's Playroom, they ask you to hold the controller up, pull the two, L2 and R2 down, to like ignite the rockets on the controller. And as you pull them down the first time, they lock about halfway, and then you have to, or they put up some resistance about halfway, and you have to pull them more. So that caught me by surprise the very first time. Like, I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Literally every time after that, didn't notice it. It kind of got tedious and annoying because you can try claim immersion all you want, the last thing I want on an input device is something messing with my inputs, delaying my inputs, hampering my ability to put in inputs, stuff like that. I don't care if they shake, if they offer different levels of resistance based on what they're doing and all that stuff. It's completely irrelevant. You do not notice it at all outside of that very first thing. I played all that Spider-Man stuff and I couldn't notice any of it. It's just like HD Rumble on the Nintendo Switch. It is pure marketing gimmickry. The DualSense is whack. It's okay to use, but the all those extra features and all, completely whack, completely overblown, completely overrated, and essentially fake news spouted by fanboys. That's all it is. That's all it is. And hey, those features are even on PC now. Go play Metro Exodus with a controller. See how that suits you. It even has all the PS5 adaptive triggers, all the PS5 extra DualSense rumble if you play it with a DualSense. So get Shrek'd. All that stuff is on PC. But anyway, overall, am I happy with the PS5? I mean, I don't know. It's a console. I'm never truly happy with modern consoles. They're just low-end PCs. So, and hell, at this rate, all the Sony games are coming to console anyway. All the Sony console games are coming to PC anyway. Where they will play and look best. All third-party games will play and look best on PC. All Microsoft games will play and look best on PC. Hell, even Nintendo games, you can just emulate them and they run and look best on PC. So, winning, bro, winning. Meanwhile, I got stuff like this. Where are we? This bad boy behind me for some beautiful, beautiful quality retro gaming and whatnot too. But you know what, lads? That's it. We are done. It's been a while. It's been a hot minute, and we are finally at the end. We have reached the conclusion of our 88th episode of our Quack Experimental Podcast. As promised, I want to thank everyone for sticking around, for hanging out, shooting the shit. As always, comment section below, slide in, DM, whatever it is. Thoughts, salt, butthurt, opinion, praise, fanboyisms, questions, anything about it. It's all down there. As promised, we are back. We are going to be on the regular as well. We're going to be doing the regular videos every few days, every day or two, whatever it is. Whenever something newsworthy or talk point worthy comes up, we're going to be there. We're going to be saving up the lesser important things for more podcasts, which will be more frequent. We'll be back with maybe, one every 2 weeks, one every week and a half, whatever warrants it, whenever we get enough stuff, because that is the important thing. Also, be sure to remember to hit the link in the description below. You can check out the Twitch stuff we do over there as well. We go with retro game streams, usually Monday to Friday nights here in the Irish time zone. That is UTC, usually for you people out there. And on top of that as well, we'll be throwing in a couple of extra stuff as well. Maybe some early morning streams, a couple of modern games. Modern mornings, possibly. Ooh, what a name. But there's some big shake-ups, big changes, big everything going on. So be sure to check that out and all too. As always, I want to thank everyone for sticking around, hanging out, shooting the shit. Support long-term, short-term, whatever it is, no matter what you do. If you're just a casual watcher, if you're a long-time sub, if you're a short-term sub, even if there's only specific things that you like to check out on the channel. If you comment, if you don't comment, if you check out any of the live streams, either back when we used to do them here on YouTube or over on Twitch, whatever it is, I appreciate all of it. Thank you guys so much. You guys are the reason I keep going and I keep doing this, and that is what matters. Now, we are out at the end of our 88th episode, and you know what? It's going to feel so good to say this for the first time in a long time. I'm not even going to throw up the splash screen. We'll put it somewhere here just as a little bit of a mini thing. Because remember, guys, winners don't play Switch ports. Damn, that felt good. I've missed it.